The hero caught the beast that fell into his trap. He said he hadn't eaten normal meat for a long time. The guy screamed when he saw the girl. He saw a huge boar and said, which began to eat his precious meat. The hero thought that this was what he expected from the devil's kingdom. It would not be easy, and he asked himself why he lived in such hell. It all started a few days ago. The man told him that he was a little late and that the land had been sold 4 days ago. The guy couldn't believe it, even though it was the land he had had his eye on for a long time. It took him 3 years of frugal living to save up the required amount, but now those 5 coins were useless. The man said that the coins were quite dirty. The hero asked if there was any other good soil. They told him that, unfortunately, such land was difficult to find, and the guy himself only had 5 gold coins. The guy replied that it didn't matter to him, and any land would do. He would even agree to build himself a place to spend the night if she was without a house. He was ready to put up with some inconveniences as long as they helped him. The man said that in that case he had something. It was worth exactly 5 coins and the land was quite large. It was a forest surrounded by mountains, cliffs, and the sea, and quite far from the city. The man told him that no one had ever entered there before and that the place had not been explored yet. In other words, there was no information about this land. The main character thought that he had nothing to lose anyway, and he decided to buy her out. He never really had any talent. He was kicked out of his home when he turned 15. He immediately became an adventurer just because it seemed cool. But the reality turned out to be not so pleasant. Most of these adventurers had no fighting skills. Far from free, they worked to simply survive. He admired the famous adventurers who appeared from time to time. Like them, the guy got by with odd jobs in order to later spend the money he had saved on temporary pleasures. He even thought about giving up his profession and becoming an adventurer, but he has no talent as a merchant or a craftsman. The hero thought it was useless and would only make things worse. But then the boy remembered, even if he wasn't very good as an adventurer, he was still a farmer's son. If he had his own land, he could achieve something. And so, having gathered his determination, after 3 years, he managed to save 5 coins. Now he had his own land. A new life greeted him. The knights asked where he was going. They were soldiers from the Kingdom of Estonia. They told him there was nothing ahead except their training base. The guy said he had bought some land there. The soldiers said that this was a virtually unexplored area and a demonic realm. They asked him to show his adventurer card. The adventurer's card had a name and rank written on it, and the adventurer's. The materials and color of the card changed as the rank increased. He always had the lowest rank. He was told that before he ventured into the Devil's Nest, he should learn some survival skills in the nearby forest. He thought they were laughing at him. The deeper part of that forest was probably where his land was. The demon realm wasn't as teeming with monsters as he thought. It was pretty peaceful there. However, monsters began to fight before his eyes. A wild bear and a hornet vespa. Now he could not defeat them. He hid in the bushes and saw that everything was over. The boy was worried when he saw the giant monsters, but he suddenly got lucky. He needed to collect materials. The hero received an arthropod eye and a wing, and also a magic stone. Each type of monster has one stone, each of which has its own unique properties. Monsters and demons use magic stones inside themselves to manipulate magic and use abilities. Humans, on the other hand, draw magic from nature and do not have magic stones in their bodies. At least, that's what he learned in the Adventurers Guild courses. This magic stone should have a poisonous effect, but the poisonous sting that should be in its belly is missing. This sting was in the bear, as the hero thought. The guy said he would cut up the meat, remove the skin, and dry it a bit. The hero was used to this, working in a butcher's shop. He received the materials: fur, meat, poisonous sting of a hornet, and a magic stone of a bear. The guy thought it was a good start. After another 3 days of traveling deep into the forest, the hero finally arrived. Mountains and forest stretched out before him. The river marked the boundary of the land. The ecosystem beyond the river was different. The guy said that everything was fine, and it was time to take the first step into a new life. He asked if his eyes were deceiving him because he saw local slime. He was starting to feel dizzy. Because it had drained his magic, if he was attacked again, he would faint from magical exhaustion. To defeat the slime, you need to attack the core in its center. He was going to target the core with punches and from a distance. At first he missed, and his hoe completely dissolved. The hero cursed. He defeated the slime, and it poured liquid onto his face. The guy was happy that he succeeded. One wild bear skin was wasted, and it seems not very profitable. He got the material magic slime stone. The guy thought that now was not the time to be upset, and that he needed to set up camp before it got dark. The hero said that if he had a few tree branches and leaves, he could make a makeshift tent. There were many plants in that forest that he had never seen before. When he cut a palm leaf, a slimy liquid came out. The other plants were also not suitable for building a tent. The hero saw a flower field in the middle of the jungle. He saw the bones of monsters. The guy thought he didn't like the place. However, he said he would deal with it later. First he needed to set up camp. It was already night. The hero said that everything was more or less normal for now, but he was very hungry. He thought it was a good thing he had taken wild bear meat with him. The plants and animals in that forest are not simple. Tomorrow he must begin research to understand what to do next. He saw large, sparkling eyes, and became frightened. It was a green tiger. The girl told him that if he met him unarmed, he needed to prepare himself and lose his life. The guy threw poisoned meat at the tiger. However, this did not work at all, because the tiger preferred fresh meat. The animal began to run after him to attack. The tiger almost touched him, but he didn't succeed. The guy hit the nail on the head. He thought it was scary, and he seriously decided that he was finished. It was only day one of his new life, and so much had already happened. At this rate, he would have no hope for the future. The sounds were getting louder, and the monster was definitely getting closer. The hero thought that he could not win the fight, and he needed to run away because it was too dangerous. The boy decided that he needed to return to the village and start all over again. However, he did not have such an option. He was always told that he was not needed there and that he would only get in the way. The work of an adventurer was very boring. The hero thought that running away would not change anything, and he had no other choice. All he has left is his life there, and that wasteland is all he has. The tiger was approaching. If the guy's plan turned out to be wrong, he would die right there. However, everything worked out, and he realized that the flower garden was, after all, a natural trap. Those white mysterious flowers had a strong soporific effect. He came down and covered his nose. The guy thought he had to be careful not to breathe them in. The hero won and received the green tiger materials and the magic stone. He felt like he was going to die of hunger. He hadn't even had time to eat when it all happened. The guy said that green tiger meat is disgusting. He lay down and said that he wanted to eat something tasty. It was hard for him to be in the new territory, but he will try to do everything possible to hold out a little longer. After all, that place is his personal hell. He didn't understand where he was or what was happening. There were a lot of people there, and he didn't understand what kind of place it was. The guy thought it was a strange dream. The hero had had this dream countless times since he was a child, and he was curious about what it meant. He saw the slime that had already grabbed his bag. The guy took an axe and chopped his heart. The hero was glad that his bag was not damaged and thought that he was getting stronger. He decided it was time to continue exploring that hell. After all, it was his land, and he should at least know where everything was. He saw a girl who didn't look alive. The upper part of the woman's body is the body of a snake. It must be a lamia. They are quite strong. Inside her mouth was a poisoned Vespa hornet stinger. Now it became clear to him. It was because of that meat with poisonous needles that the guy threw to the green tiger yesterday. Whatever one may say, he was lucky and needed to extract the magic stone from the girl. Today he decided to delve into the suimin grass. The hero saw mushrooms. He was interested in whether they were edible or not. In that hell it was too dangerous to approach even harmless plants. He caught a green rat and decided to call it a forest rat. The guy threw it into the mushrooms. The rat did not move anymore. The hero realized that these were paralyzing spores, another natural trap. He said that it was impossible to live there. The guy decided that traps were the only way for a person like him without proper combat training to fight monsters. He decided that he would survive. The protagonist finally finished digging the hole. He put the suimin flower and the mushroom in there. The guy decided that he refused to move on. He was very hungry. The hero hoped that tomorrow he would be able to catch something big. He woke up and said it was time to see what was going on there. The guy saw a huge boar. Even though it was sleeping, he still couldn't defeat it. The hero decided that he needed to be finished off as soon as possible. It takes him a whole day just to cut him up. There was a blue snake inside the monster's belly. The guy thought it was a very strange ecosystem. It was already dark. He received the boar's fangs, fur, meat, and a magic stone. The hero thought that he hadn't eaten normal meat for a long time, and it was delicious. His axe and knife were completely dull and useless in this state. The bones looked strong, so he decided to try using them. It was heavy, but fairly easy to handle. Now he was making an axe. When the resin hardened, it should be as hard as a rock. He would pour it into a mold he had made from clay. He ended up making an axe from tree resin and a sword from boar bone. It's already morning. He's so engrossed in making tools that he doesn't even feel tired. The protagonist decided to make another trap. He finished much faster than yesterday. The guy decided that he was getting stronger or just gaining experience. He assumed that it was all about the meat. However, it was great that he was like this now. Before, the guy couldn't get stronger, no matter how hard he tried. He saw a cave. The hero saw a wall torch and thought that someone lived there. He apologized. The guy thought about how it seemed deserted there, but there are traces that someone lived there, in the past. He found a diary. It contained entries about monsters, edible plants, and medicinal herbs. This was vital information for survival in those parts. He was surprised that there were ruins in the demonic realm, but there were no specifics. Neither brute force nor magic will help. A giant monster appears every 3 months. It is necessary to master space-time magic. Common sense, emphasized from modern magic books, will not help. Ancient magic circles are far ahead of modern times. Unknown explored that place. He regretted that he could not solve the mystery of those lands. The warehouse was filled with unfamiliar metals. It looked like the knives and armor were made by the stranger himself. The hero assumed that he was an experienced adventurer. He was very curious to know about the stranger, but some things will remain a secret. Above all, he should be glad that he found such a shelter. The interior of the cave appeared to be untouched, and it was possible that it was a relatively safe place. The main character decided to move there. He decided that he would make a house around the cave as a base, and that over time it could become a beautiful place. His dreams of having his own home were starting to come true. First, he needs to clean up that neglected room, then repair what can be restored and make what is missing from the available materials. He said he thought what he had done would be enough. The guy made a new home for himself. Of course, no one welcomes him. But again, freedom from unpleasant human relationships suits him just fine. The knights said they would kill him as soon as a breach appeared. The only thing missing was a wild bear. They couldn't do anything. One said that if they didn't get rid of him now, he might come out to the people. They had no other choice. The stranger asked if they had any problems and if they wanted him to help them. They asked him who he was. They were told that the wild bear was not so strong in the Devil's Kingdom. He asked to be allowed to fight him. It was necessary to watch for wide swings, avoid a strong skull, and hit soft spots. The hero greeted them and asked if they were from the training camp. He said he lived nearby, and asked if they had any wheat or vegetable seeds. The guy wouldn't mind trading them for monster meat or magic stones. The soldier said he had some on the campgrounds. The hero suggested going. If possible, he would also like to exchange materials for coal and paper. He was glad that he managed to get everything he wanted. The guy said he was starting to get used to life in the demon realm. Well, there were still a lot of places he hadn't been. He needed to draw a proper map. He didn't know why the soldiers looked confused. The hero thought he had become strong, but perhaps it was natural, considering that he lived surrounded by strong and difficult enemies. The boy was so absorbed in hunting that he had not washed for a long time, and perhaps the soldier was embarrassed by his dirty appearance. He assumed that he had an unpleasant smell. The hero said that since vegetable seeds had appeared, he thought it was time to take up farming. He saw a huge turtle and began to drive it out of there because it could ruin his field. She threw him a swamp, but the guy was upset because he had just washed himself. The turtle's leg got stuck in the swamp and it lost its balance. Now it was just a piece of meat to him. The meat was very tasty, but the soup was even better. The stranger's notes mentioned that turtle. It was a smoke turtle, which you can catch and make your pet. This is one of the weakest monsters in the demonic realm. The protagonist decided that it was time to continue exploring the lands, and his goal today is to find the sea. The boy had dried so much meat that it had used up almost all the salt. He thought he should ask the soldiers if they had any. When mapping, the heroes could see the river from the top of the hill and find the sea by moving downstream. He said that it seemed that the demonic kingdom ended there. All that was left was to extract the salt from the seawater. On the shore he saw something strange. There was a girl lying there. He checked her breathing. The hero realized that she was a demon. As far as he knows, long ago, they lost the war to humans and disappeared somewhere. The guy thought he didn't need any more problems. The girl's breathing was weak, and he had no tools to treat her. He realized that this was his land and he was not responsible for the demons who violated the border. The hero thought he would pretend he hadn't seen anything. He had just come to make salt. He was being chased by a dinosaur, and he didn't understand what he was doing. The guy tested the leaves on a wood rat. The taste was disgusting, but it would restore his strength. He thought he had done all he could. It was getting late and he needed to find food. The hero offered the girl something to eat, and she agreed. The guy said he didn't know where she came from, but she was currently in a demonic kingdom on his land. He asked her to leave the land as soon as she finished eating the crab. She started saying something in a language he didn't understand. The girl called him Makyou. He said that it wasn't his name. However, she continued calling him that and the guy resigned himself to it. The hero said that she could call him that and asked what her name was. The girl said that her name was Till. She turned to him and he asked if she had enough food and apologized for not having any more. The guy asked her how she got there. He decided to use picture communication. The hero said that he understood almost nothing, but it seemed that there was a conflict between the demons and the girl ran away. He asked her if she was interested in what he did. The guy said he boiled seawater to get salt. The girl used magic, and a lot of it. The hero asked her to wait. He asked if she meant that she would look after the fire. The guy thought that events were starting to develop in a strange way. If the girl intended to stay in the demonic realm for a long time, then perhaps it would be a good idea to ask him to teach her magic in lieu of rent. He ended up with a lot of salt. The guy thought that it would be more efficient to work together. He woke up the girl and told her that she needed to follow him. The hero said that she could live in his house until they built a boat to bring her back. She reminded him of himself when he first arrived there. The girl was surprised by his house. He began to resent the fact that this was his house. The guy showed her the oven he bakes bread in, the forest rat he used for experiments, and asked her not to touch everything. The girl fell asleep in his place, but he thought she was very tired. The hero brought her because he thought she might be useful, but it could become a serious problem. In other words, he will definitely be arrested if anyone finds out that a demon is hiding there. He still thinks the girl should go. He likes living in the demonic realm. The hero decided not to wait until the morning and wake her up now and try to explain everything. The boy thought about what he would tell her next time. And so began the strange life of a man and a demon in the demonic realm. He told her that she was too weak and asked how she would survive in the Devil's Kingdom. The guy said he couldn't protect her all the time, but apparently nothing could be done. The hero suggested starting with training. He suggested that she first try to catch as many forest rats as possible. Next came shooting practice. The guy asked her not to shoot such big balls and to make them smaller and hit harder. He told her to aim correctly and asked why she was closing her eyes. One mistake and she would be finished, so he told her to shoot. The girl hit the target. The protagonist asked her not to make such a smug face. He didn't know why, but it irritated him. The girl was exhausted. Although she had only defeated one green monkey before sunset, he had to babysit her. The boy asked her to teach him magic. Something flowed from Till's hands and then returned back. It was like magic. He had a slightly strange feeling. The boy was surprised that he had a lot of mana, and he decided that it was wasteful not to use it. He asked himself where he got it from, the mana. The hero assumed that it was because he began to live there. The guy assumed that he could use magic in battle, but he just didn't think about it. The hero said that he would try household magic. He did something, and the girl exhaled. Magic is an image. The guy said that after listening to it, it means that with the help of magic you can create anything. And he decided to use the image. He got a magical flow, but it was small and weak. It was useless in battle. The guy said that they need to try to kill as many monsters as possible. He showed her their route for today. The protagonist said that if she was afraid, why not fly up using wind magic? He asked if it was hard to control magic and said that then she would have to climb up. The girl turned to him and he told her not to scream, as this was also part of the training. There was a big moth there, and he told her to try to deal with it herself. Till was exposed to a paralyzing poison. The boy asked if she was okay. He had a magic stone of a big moth in his hands. He decided to make a magic stone on the cane. It had a paralyzing effect. It turned out to be a good idea. From that moment on, the girl began to develop rapidly. She used a combo of paralyzing and offensive magic. For the next few days, the girl hunted monsters using the paralyzing combo. Till changed as she got used to the devil's realm. He was glad that her movement was getting faster, but he still hadn't learned how to do a quick spell because the image took time. The guy saw a group of demons. There were too many of them, but the girl used her cane on them. After this, they found themselves faced with an enemy that was too tough for them. Paralysis didn't work on him either. The guy thought that that monster wouldn't let them escape so easily. He was always one step ahead. The protagonist asked if it was the girl's magic. She shook her head. The guy assumed that he used some kind of magic. At that moment, an image appeared in his head. It was a mysterious board that he had seen many times in his dreams about another world. It seemed that thanks to that board he had learned many different magical images. The guy thanked her and asked how to use it. The girl explained something to him. He answered her that he didn't understand anything. Today the boy is practicing magic again. He was wondering if it is possible to make something like a magic blade. A knife made of special tree resin is definitely not suitable for this role. He tried different materials such as hellbug horn and monster claw, but none of them worked. Like that time he needed to do something powerful enough. The guy thought about why the girl was making noise. Demons don't have that technique. The hero said that he may have made an amazing discovery. He asked what was on the plate. There was raw meat and nuts. The guy said that it was not a dish and that he would cook it now. The main character made bread and the girl ate it with pleasure. He was glad she liked it. He had a lot of work to do, like making a map, so an extra pair of hands wouldn't hurt, but one day he'd have to send the girl back home. The protagonist told her to cut down the forest. They would build a boat, and she would return home whenever she wanted. He said that they would waste a lot of time like that, and if he had a normal weapon, he could use it as a magic sword. An idea came to his mind, and he said he would be back soon. The hero decided to use the stranger's weapon and imbued it with wind magic. However, this was a bad idea. The ball had too much magic conductivity, the stranger's things were dangerous, and he decided to put them aside for now. They cut down enough wood for a boat. It was hard to plane. He assumed that this was because the wood was damp, and then there was nothing to be done and it would have to be dried. The guy decided to practice and use magic on different parts of the body. The girl approached him. She wanted to go kill monsters, and he told her to be careful. It was already evening. When you are concentrated, time flies. The girl baked bread. If you have the opportunity to eat whenever you want, sleep wherever you want, then that's a good life. He opened his eyes and asked what the noise was. It suddenly became colder. The monster grabbed the girl and the boy. The hero decided that they would escape from there as soon as they went down below. He said that the girl left him no choice. The main character used an earth magic fist. The guy will direct wind magic to his feet to make the landing soft. Till used water magic to make a trap. However, she swallowed some water herself. He helped her. The sun was already setting, and they were left without supplies in an area full of rocks and sand. A sandstorm started, and they had to stay there for the night. The girl had a high fever, and the guy assumed that she had a cold. He didn't think he could find any medicine there and wondered what to do. The protagonist thought he could find out something from the stranger's diary. The demon looks like old men. The females have a more chiseled face. The effect of the magic stone is a cure for colds. He saw the demons sitting on the Trent. It's in the swampy area. It's quite far north from there. The guy made a canopy out of a wyvern's wing. The hero asked the girl to be patient for a bit. He channeled magic into his legs and used normal running. He needed to find the magic stone quickly. The monster attacked him, but the guy started to fight back and said that he had no time. He brought the girl a magic stone and gave it to her. The unusual black aura was a cold. Till recovered and the guy was happy about it. He asked her to stop clinging to him. Her horns were rubbing against his wounds. At the same time, on the border of the Devil's Kingdom, a girl was exploring an unknown place. The protagonist said that they were working in the field today. He thought about using magic to create an irrigation system. A girl approached him. She asked what they should do. The guy replied that they should wait and see. The knights attacked the slime core and used magic as bait. They were surprised by the strange monster. The knight asked why the slime was so strong. The boy thought that they used fire magic as a distraction, but it was no use since they couldn't penetrate the core. The knights were completely exhausted and half of them had lost their magic. The main character introduced himself and said that he was the owner of that land, so he had to say a few words. He asked what they were doing. They asked who he was. The man said they were adventurers, White Lightning. They came to that land to fight strong monsters. The strangers told him not to worry, and they would exterminate all the monsters in that hole. The man presented his adventurer card. The protagonist said he didn't care. It was private property and he asked not to go there without permission. The adventurer asked him to watch his language, because they were the strongest party in the city. He asked why they had to die. The guy said they better not go any further, otherwise they would get into trouble. The knights saw the small dragon and immediately began to run. The main character saw the priestess unconscious, and this was another problem for him. He was just about to sell the materials he had accumulated at the training camp, and he decided to take the girl there at the same time. He invited Till to walk with him. The protagonist asked her to cover the demon's horns and skin. He wanted to channel some magic into his legs and move forward. The guy greeted the man and said he came to trade. The stranger recognized him and asked about the girl next to him. The hero replied that Till was a bit strange but handy, and now he could get even more materials. He provided magic stones and materials, and said that he found the girl on the way. The man said that the sword that the main character made himself is simply amazing. A blade made of green tiger bone is quite a rare thing. The guy said he also tried to make a staff from a magic stone. The man said he didn't know much about it, but the materials were good. The main character said that he would like to buy sewing tools, woodworking tools, an iron sword, and some women's clothing. He also said that if possible, he would not refuse the book of spells and space and time. The man replied that he wasn't sure they had it, but even if they did, it was too expensive. The guy asked if it could be ordered from the capital. The merchant said that in that case you would have to pay in advance, and many of these books are fakes. He thinks it would be easier to go there himself. The main character said that in that case he would try to look for her himself. The man said that he would order clothes and other materials, and asked the guy to come in a week. The next day, the protagonist decided that from today on he would start looking for the ruins that were mentioned in the stranger's diary. He and the girl decided to go on a treasure hunt. However, the stranger did not write where the ruins he needed were. He did not even have a complete map of the demonic realm. To the west is the entrance to the demonic kingdom, and to the east are the seas from which the girl sailed. To the north are mountains and impassable terrain. The guy decided that they needed to go south. As soon as they left the forest, they immediately found themselves in a desert. The protagonist thought that he was mistaken, because there was nothing there. They were attacked by a sandworm. The diary said that despite its large size, it was a rather weak monster. Even the magic sword was useless, and the protagonist said that they needed to run. Makyou and Till escaped from the sandworm. The guy can't understand how PJ could call the monster a weakling. He wonders who this PJ is. After a short silence, he decides to see if the diary describes a way to defeat it. They return to the cave, where Makyou begins studying the diary. After a while, the hero says that he seems to have found it. He understands that PJ's weapon was different from his. The man used magic circles. The guy starts to reason out loud that there are different magic circles drawn in the diary, so he should try to make the same ones. The hero draws a circle and thinks that now he needs to direct magic into it. The heroes are very surprised and scream when the explosion occurs. Now Makyou directs his power to another magic circle. The stone splits into two parts, which surprises the boy. He examines the stone and asks out loud if this inscription really cuts through space. Makyou remembers the man's things. The hero realizes that if he looks closely, PJ has magic circles built into everything. He made them so that they would look unnoticeable. He thinks again about who the hell he was. The guy has no doubt that the man was an excellent magician. The hero ponders why this man decided to die here alone. Out loud, he comes to the conclusion that he does not understand anything. Till notices his thoughtful face and asks, deafening the sound V, if Makyou is sad. The hero remains silent in response. The next morning they return to the previous place. The hero takes PJ's sword with him. He says that it can be used in the desert, but first they need to stock up on water. The heroes approach the river. Till notices something and calls out to Makyou, touching his shoulder. He responds with a cry and turns in the direction the girl pointed. He is surprised to see yesterday's girl standing in the water. She looks intently in their direction. The hero thinks that it is that priestess again and asks out loud what she wants. The priestess says that she has left the White Lightning, her name is Jennifer Volkov, and then asks if she could stay here. Makyou tells her no, he refuses the offer. The girl is very surprised. The heroes return to their work. Jennifer says more loudly and convincingly that they will need a healer in case of injury or illness. She was also responsible for consumables in the squad, so she wants to be allowed to stay. The hero says no again, he already told her everything. The priestess begs, she doesn't want to stay in the camp. Makyou doesn't understand why she needs this. The guy groans out loud, he guessed. He assumes that she didn't leave, but was kicked out. The girl is taken by surprise. She blushes and, stuttering, tries to convince him that it doesn't matter. The guy says that's not true. This is his land. He can't leave her here without knowing all the details. Jennifer pauses for a moment and presses her lips together. She then begins to shake and, with tears in her eyes, says that her former comrades said that she was no longer needed by them, so she asks to be allowed to stay here. Makyou responds by saying that he doesn't understand why she needs this. He asks why she doesn't return to her homeland. The priestess replies that she has no home, she is an orphan. However, the hero does not allow her to live here. For people like her, this place is hell. He suggests that she look for a better place. Jennifer proudly denies this assumption. She declares that this land is exactly what she was looking for. This does not please the hero at all. The priestess continues to say that there is no one here, so no one will betray her. The hero shouts that he is here and this is his land. The girl is not convinced. She nudges him and offers to take her to his camp. Makyou screams even louder, is she really deaf? The guy explains that if she stays, she will have to pay rent and not make a fuss about what she sees in the Devil's Kingdom. The girl quickly agrees and says that she has some money. They return to the camp. Makyou explains to the newcomer that he needs to beware of monsters. The priestess sings cheerfully. The monster immediately attacks her. The girl passes out. The hero sighs heavily, he told her so. In the cave, the hero thinks that he doesn't want the girl to die and turn into a monster, so let her stay here for a while and then he'll send her back. Then there's a knock on the door. Jennifer screams and points at Till. She doesn't understand what the hell a demon is doing here. The hero notices that she promised not to make a fuss. The demoness, deafening the ringing sounds, tells Makyou about the bread. The priestess moves away from her in horror. The hero starts eating it, gets up, and says he's going to water the fields. The priestess doesn't understand what's going on, tries to call out to him, and when she can't, asks Till if his name is Makyou. Jennifer runs after him and continues to be surprised that she saw a demon. She asks if they aren't dangerous. Makyou doesn't understand the danger. Maybe she's a little stupid, but they get along well. The girl says that they are enemies. If the guards find out, he will be arrested. The hero doesn't like it. He turns around and says that they were enemies more than 100 years ago. He wonders if this is what the church teaches, to persecute those who have done nothing. The priestess denies this and tries to find a counterbalance. The guy shows that Till taught him magic for rent. He pours water on the fields and says that it turned out pretty good. He announces that if Jennifer can't pay the rent, he will throw her out. The girl proudly replies that she has 10 gold pieces. She asks if that's enough for a month. The hero is surprised by the amount of 10 gold pieces and says out loud that it's enough. The girl hands him a piece of paper. Makyou examines it and asks in surprise if it is a check. He says it is not gold. The priestess smiles happily and agrees because the check is worth 10 gold coins. The hero replies that this won't do. Jennifer grins because what else could she expect from people in the wilderness? In the capital, this is normal practice. She teaches that the check must be taken to an exchange office and the gold can be exchanged there. Makyou responds by saying that they are not in the capital and there are no exchange offices here. The priestess puffs up with anger. The girl says that she understands everything. Does he really need a worker? She continues that she can wash dishes, collect firewood, or, here she breaks off. Then she goes into herself and mutters that she will do anything. She believes that one day she will become the highest official in this ideal country and take revenge on them. The hero looks at her in bewilderment. The guy thinks that she suddenly got angry, and then all this talk about revenge. Then he scratches his head and says out loud that he knew it. He spreads his arms out to the sides and asks her to get out, as she doesn't belong here. Jennifer doesn't understand what he's talking about. Did he do something wrong? The hero confirms this. Now he understands why she was kicked out of the party. The reason is that she doesn't listen. He continues that she gets angry when she doesn't get her way, and here things rarely go the way you want them to, because life in the Devil's Kingdom is not a bed of roses. The priestess tisks and trembles with shame, then she turns around and leaves, puffing. The girl packs her things and leaves the cave. Till continues to eat bread and asks if the girl is leaving. The guy confirms this and explains that she came here to take revenge and there is no place for such a person here. It is better for her to start everything in the capital. The next day arrives. Makyou announces that they will continue exploring the desert today. Till jumps for joy. The hero did not forget to take PJ's sword with him. Here he remembers something and says that in the desert you can lose your bearings, so he caught a creature that will be useful on the way back. He shows a reef bird that has an instinct to return home. The girl is happy and says with deafening ringing sounds that Makyou has foreseen everything. The hero smiles in response. Then he stretches his legs, turns around and suggests that they go faster. Here he is distracted and called by name by Till. He stops abruptly. The guy asks what else happened. The demoness points to the rocks below. A girl lies among them. Jennifer lies unconscious. She is covered in wounds. The hero examines her leg and finds that she is breathing, but her leg is broken. He sighs heavily and says that he will have to leave the priestess for one more night. Till, deafening the ringing sounds, agrees. They take the girl to a cave. Makyou tells the demoness that he healed her wounds with restoration magic, so he thinks everything is fine. Till says that he does not want to drag out the search any longer, so they will go to the desert, as planned. The girl silently agrees with him. They run towards the desert again. The guy thinks that the priestess will leave herself when she understands what happened. He notices something in the sand, and so does Till. She addresses the hero by name and points to an elevation in the sand. It is an earthworm. A huge monster roars towards the heroes. Makyou takes out his sword and thinks that he needs to deal with the worm before he can explore the desert in peace. Now he relies on PJ's sword. With the help of this weapon, the guy instantly cuts the monster into many pieces. He himself is happy and surprised by such an instant murder. Till gets scared and, again deafening the ringing sounds, says that it's cool. The hero thinks about what a damn good sword it is. Now he understands why PJ considered such monsters weak. He flips through the journal and says that it looks like the other desert monsters are just as weak. He reasons that the criteria are interesting, of course, but there is a problem. He is confused by the sign, "Never touch poisonous plants." He looks around and thinks that there are no plants here at all. Now Makyou suggests doing some research. The heroes wander through the sands, hiding from the storm behind the rocks. Here they notice a bright glow and some object in the sky. The guy is surprised and asks what it is. Till repeats his last word. The hero realizes that this is an island in the sky, chained to a chain. He remembers that this is what the ruins from PJ's diary look like. Out loud, he suggests moving faster. They approach the huge chain together. The guy can't believe it. He touches it and thinks what a big chain it is. He doesn't even know what kind of material it is. Makyou suggests climbing onto this island. Till supports him in everything. They begin their ascent. The boy breathes heavily. He realizes with horror that it turned out to be more difficult than he thought. The hero continues to sweat. He thinks that he thought he trained well in the demonic realm, but it is still very difficult. Then Till screams. Magic swirls around the girl. Makyou looks back. He realizes that she tried to make things easier for herself with magic, but it's useless. He himself already tried, but got a blowback from the chain. They could stick to it with magic, but now it is absorbing it. The hero feels his mana is quickly running out. He is curious to know who created this thing. Now it is a mystery that they must solve. The heroes continue their ascent. They have already gone far from the land and are almost approaching the island. The guy, barely breathing, says that they are almost there. The girl, also very tired, deafening the ringing sounds, repeats his last word. They are already touching the ground with their hands. They climb the island with difficulty and collapse from exhaustion. Makyou is glad that they finally got there. Till confirms that it was very difficult. The hero looks around. He assumes that what is in front of them looks like a city. They look around the island. The guy thinks there are houses, furniture, signs of cultural life. He continues to look around. It seems to him that this is more of an abandoned place than ruins. They look into one of the houses. Makyou realizes that there are no human remains or signs of a struggle, meaning that the entire island is uninhabited. He continues to reason out loud and says that it looks as if they just disappeared. Till looks at the hero. Then they notice something nearby. The guy wonders if it is a grave. He carefully examines the inscription. The stone reads, "Here lies Peter Jefferson." The guy is very surprised and screams, "Is this really true?" Till looks at him questioningly. Makyou thinks that PJ is buried here, but if this is his grave, the question remains. The question is, whose skeleton was in the cave then? The hero chuckles and says he doesn't understand anything. Then he goes on to say that it's getting dark, so they'll have to spend the night here. The mysteries only get bigger. They find a house and settle in. However, the hero cannot fall asleep. He is shivering from the cold. He did not think that the temperature at the height is so low. This makes the girl wake up. He asks Till if he can cuddle up to her to warm up. The girl happily hugs him and, deafening the ringing sounds, says that these are hugs. The hero shouts that he didn't mean that at all. The journey ends. The heroes let the bird in, which, after a short circle in place, finds the right direction. Makyou announces that that's it, it's all over. They found nothing else interesting on the flying island, so they decided to return to the cave. They quickly run home. Till lowers his hands from fatigue, she says, deafening the ringing sounds, that it is very hard for her. The hero spits, now he has sand everywhere. The guy suggests using magic to heat the bath. Then they start eating bread. After that, the hero sits down on the bed with a heavy sigh. Then he notices something. He screams in surprise. Jennifer is lying on the bed, all dirty and wounded. The hero asks in bewilderment why she is still here. The girl rises and Makyou examines her even better. He notices that the priestess's fingers are broken, and he also understands that she has a fever. The guy loudly calls Till. A demoness approaches Jennifer and uses healing magic. After that, the hero repeats his question about why she is still here. The girl looks away, embarrassed. She then hugs her legs and says that she couldn't get out. As soon as she entered the forest, she was immediately attacked by monsters and plants, so she quickly got lost. Was it really the baptism of the forest? Makyou thinks that all this quickly knocked her arrogance down. He asks the next question out loud. He asks why she didn't use the restoration magic. She is a priestess. The girl answers that she used it so often that she ran out of mana. The hero sighs and then says that he is very tired, so he will just go to bed. He asks the girl to look after the fire. Jennifer asks, puzzled, if he's talking about her. The guy replies that it's not difficult, she has to work off the food she ate. The next day comes. The hero wakes up and begins to stretch and yawn. Here his gaze falls on the girl. The priestess is sitting opposite the fire and staring at it without looking away. It seems she doesn't even blink. The hero says that it seems she really has been watching the fire all this time. Jennifer blushes and replies that when she came here, she was absolutely helpless. She couldn't even get out of here. The guy sighs heavily, scratches his head, and reaches for one of the staffs. He hands her the paralyzing cane and says that he will give it to her. With it, she will be able to paralyze the monsters and get to the exit by the stream. The girl is very surprised, holds out a trembling hand, and then quickly pulls it back. The priestess then kneels down and says that she will definitely pay for the accommodation. She asks the hero if he could allow her to stay here for a while. This greatly surprises the hero. The girl continues to ask. She knows she is not good enough, but here she has realized her weakness. The priestess bows her head even lower and continues to say that if she just leaves without even trying, nothing will change. Makyou asks her in return if she wants to change, and what about her talk of revenge on her former comrades? Jennifer silently ponders these questions. She then begins to explain that she became a priestess because her parents abandoned her. Even the sisters in the church once told her to live freely, thus gently banishing her. After that, she followed the advice and became an adventurer, but she was also banished from there. Jennifer says that revenge is just a convenient word for justification. The reality is that no one needs her, so she did not want to admit her weakness. The hero continues to listen silently. Then he asks her why she needs to stay here. The girl quickly gets up and answers that it is because the two of them live here. The hero is surprised. He did not think he would hear such an answer. The priestess continues to happily say that they don't care whether anyone needs them or not, they just live freely in these harsh lands. She smiles even more happily and concludes that it's very cool. Makyou can't find the words to respond. The girl bows again and asks to teach her how to live an adventurous life. She begs the hero to help her. The guy screams. He doesn't understand what adventure she's talking about. He's just wandering around, trying to explore his lands. Then he quickly turns away from her, calms down, and lets her do whatever she wants, only asking not to drag him into it. The girl raises her head in surprise. She starts smiling again, because everything is fine now. Jennifer quickly turns around and happily asks Till to teach her how to bake bread. The demoness, continuing to eat the bread, deafening the ringing sounds, asks again. Jennifer grabs her hands. Till, not understanding anything, calls Makyou. The hero thinks that the girls find a common language very quickly. The priestess then shows that she has quickly settled in. She places a blanket in the niche and asks if, since he has allowed her to stay here for a while, she can use this place as her bed. The boy responds to these words. He thinks in fear that he seemed to be planning to live here alone. Where could he have made a mistake? Then Jennifer says that she forgot something. She takes out a coin and says that although the advance is modest, at least it is something. Makyou looks at the advance and says that it is the first time he has seen such an old coin. The girl replies that it belonged to a zombie woman, the only monster she could defeat. The guy now understands everything, so something has changed. Jennifer stayed with them for some reason he could never understand. Evening comes, the hero is planing wood with a knife. The priestess asks what they are doing. Makyou explains that they are making a cane to sell at the training camp. It may not look like much, but it works fine. The girl continues to examine the items. Then she screams that everything is completely wrong. The hero is frightened by such a sudden surge of emotions. Jennifer examines the cane and asks if it has a paralyzing effect. The guy confirms it and asks why she cares. The priestess notes that it is a very good weapon for debuffing, not some cheap thing. The heroes start to smile sheepishly. Makyou scratches his head and stutters, asking if it's true. Then the heroes leave the cave. Jennifer happily waves to them and wishes them luck. The boy and girl watch this in silence. Till, deafening the ringing sounds, asks if this woman will stay with them. Makyou answers that she will because she is not going to leave. The demoness asks why. They start running. As they run, the hero answers that he does not know. She does not want to leave. The girl happily answers that it is clear to her because Till will now have a girlfriend. Makyou is silent in response. He thinks that for some reason it seems to him that these women are pushing him around. At this time, they are approaching a human settlement. The man in the conversation remarks that he sold the hero's cane at a high price. He wonders if he could make more. The guy replies that of course he can. Then the man starts rummaging through his things. He says that the hero was looking for spellbooks, he couldn't find the right tome, but he has something. Then the man puts a book with a pentagram on the table and continues that, however, he has something. Makyou takes the book in his hands and reads the title, A Beginner's Guide. He begins to study the tome. The hero thinks that it describes the most basic magical effects and circles. It's not much, but at least he will be able to better study the basics. The guy says he'll take her in exchange for his goods. The hero says goodbye to the man. That day he bought boat building tools and women's clothing. He spends the next day studying the manual. Makyou reasons that with those magic circles on PJ's gear, he could handle fire, water, earth, and wind, but there's a problem. He realizes that most of them are unusable, so he decides to write them down on paper for the future. Then the priestess appears from around the corner. She notices that the hero reads a lot and then asks if he doesn't fight monsters. Makyou turns his head at her voice. Then he replies that he needs to defeat them somehow. Each of them has their own adventures. Jennifer looks at him silently, then leaves, saying that it is indeed so. She slowly moves through the cave, looking back. Then the girl comes back. She remembered that she didn't thank him for getting women's clothes for them. The guy listens silently, and then, without turning his head, replies that it was just a coincidence. There are some sounds in the forest. An adventurer girl with a hammer approaches. Till runs towards the hero. She shouts the guy's name and happily waves at him. The girl is covered in blood, and she has a paralyzing staff in her hands. Makyou asks what happened. Why is she covered in blood? The girl replies that it is the blood of a smoke turtle. She rummages through her pockets and asks him to see what kind of stone she found. The boy replies that it is definitely not a stone. It has a lightning pattern on it. He thinks there is no doubt that it is man-made, but when he uses magic, nothing happens. Makyou starts studying the diary again. Here he finds something. The hero shows that there is a similar lightning drawing on the page about the ruins. He asks Till where she found it. The girl answers that it was in the lake. She points to Jennifer, who has collapsed from exhaustion, and says that she was the one who taught her to swim. Makyou watches this silently. Makyou says that there is a possibility that there are ruins at the bottom of the lake, so they need to explore this place. The heroes head to the right place. Now the hero prepares. He takes off his top, warms up, and says he's off. Before diving, he uses light magic on his hand. After that, he dives into the water. The girls watch. The hero dives deeper and deeper. Small fish swim around him, but then a huge one appears. Makyou notices it and immediately uses magic, thinking that she should receive. He inflicts a huge wound on the monster with one blow, and then dives even deeper. The guy reasons that it is too difficult to fight here, so it is better to create a water current with magic and then dive deeper. The hero creates a stream, but notices that something is wrong. He curses and thinks that the current he created has stirred up the silt, which is why nothing can be seen. He decides to turn this to his advantage by creating even more water flows to clear any possible ruins of silt, which he does with magic. The guy emerges. Till asks how it went. Makyou replies that there is nothing visible there now. He puts on a t-shirt and continues to tell that he thought there might be ruins there, so he dug up the bottom. The hero decides to dive there again when the water becomes clear. Then he notices something. Someone is approaching them. It's the girl with the hammer. Jennifer jumps up and calls the guy's name. He's silent at first. And then he greets the newcomer and asks what brought her to the Devil's Kingdom. She asks for forgiveness. She just heard them say that people live here, and she stops and runs to them. The hero groans. A water monster attacks the girl, screaming. She drops her weapon in fear. The heroes simply watch her struggle in silence. Till asks, deafening the ringing sounds, if everything is okay, if she needs help. Makyou replies that it is better to wait a little. He thinks it is a man, so he says that it will be easier to save him when he starts to drown. Only a trembling hand is visible from the water now. The hero understands that now it is possible. He grabs the drowning man by his clothes. Makyou pulls out the stranger. She coughs and spits out water. The guy is surprised to realize that it is a girl in front of him. He pulls her out onto the shore and explains that if she's going to wander around the Devil's Realm, she should have been better prepared. It's no place for someone who can't even handle mucus. The girl, still coughing, asks for forgiveness. She says that she heard that they make high-quality canes, so she came here to buy them. Everyone listens to her attentively. Makyou now understands everything, but the canes are sold at the training camp. The stranger begins to beg him. She really needs the canes. She begs him to sell them to her. The hero looks at her silently, and then agrees and asks if she has anything to exchange them for, since he doesn't need the money. The girl asks to look at the contents of her backpack. Maybe they will find something useful there. The guy looks at the things thoughtfully. His attention is drawn to a book. He starts leafing through it and asks if it is a history book. He is interested in what kind of book. The stranger replies that it should contain the history of these lands. She then goes on to say that it also says something about flying islands and monsters higher than mountains. She thinks that the author has clearly embellished. Makyou continues to study the book carefully, thinking that she is wrong, since it is most likely true. Out loud, he agrees to the offer. He will exchange 10 canes for this history book. The girl stutters and asks if she heard correctly about 10. That would be great. The hero says he will take the book and bring her 10 canes when she returns. She is very worried and asks him to wait. It is too good an offer and she does not know when she can come again. Makyou thinks that she is right. Then he thinks of something and looks at her intently. The guy asks if she can keep a secret. He explains that what she sees in the demonic realm stays in the demonic realm. If she can't keep a secret, they won't be able to come to an agreement. The girl replies that she understands. Makyou shows her till. The demoness looks at him questioningly. The girl is very scared. She asks in surprise if it is a demon. Till confirms this assumption. Is this really a problem? The hero repeats his words that what she sees in the demonic realm stays here, and asks if this is true. The girl is silent for a second, and stutters that he is right. Everyone returns to the cave. The guy asks Jennifer to check if there is anything there that can be exchanged, and Till asks to pick up magic stones and wands. The girls begin to carry out the task. Makyou remembers that he did not ask earlier why the girl needed so many magical items. The stranger continues to stutter and explains that bandits have risen up to the west of here, so they need powerful weapons to suppress them. The hero thoughtfully asks again if she said anything about the Civil War, and then says that it is a good time to earn money. The girl is very surprised and starts screaming. She does not understand how this is possible. The guy notices that this doesn't sound like a merchant's answer. She gasps and stutters that it is true. Jennifer approaches the hero and whispers to him if she can distract him for a few words. Then she continues to whisper and says that the quality of the goods is too good. She suggests that in order to get such goods, you need to rob a noble's carriage. Makyou also whispers and asks if she is a thief. Already loudly, addressing the girl herself, the priestess answers that perhaps this is really so, because she has a feeling that she has seen her somewhere. The hero also loudly assumes that they are dealing with an adventurer who has gone over to the bandit's side, and then asks for forgiveness, because he does not deal with criminals. This shocks the stranger. She shouts that she is not a thief. The heroes look at this in bewilderment. Then, the guy asks her to explain where she got such a product. The girl fumbles, trying to find the right words. Then she, again stuttering, confesses that she is a noblewoman from Eastern Kiner, from where her uncle the Lord sent her to buy weapons. Now Jennifer understands where she saw her. Makyou looks at her questioningly and says that he didn't understand anything. The priestess begins to explain that Eastern Kiner is the closest place to the Devil's Kingdom, and it is also generally accepted that the Devil's Kingdom is also the territory of Eastern Kiner. The hero is silent and ponders these words. He points his finger at the adventurer, asks again if he understood correctly that a civil war broke out on her territory, and the daughter of a nobleman went here to buy weapons, and then tells her that it would be better if she ran away. The noblewoman, stuttering again, says loudly that for the inhabitants of Eastern Kiner, flight is not an option. Jennifer supports her and says that Eastern Kiner is located next to the lands of the elves, so they have nowhere to run. For the elves, they are barbarians. Makyou understands this, but didn't her uncle let her go so that she could run away? The girl quickly replied that, no way, because she is the best female warrior in Eastern Kiner. Now it is clear to the hero. He says that the main thing is that she did not steal them. The guy gives her the staffs and lets her leave the forest with the order not to tell anyone about this place. The girl, loaded with things, leaves. Then the heroes continue to explore the lake. The guy says that he came across the bones of a giant monster that day, but found nothing else. The next day, the girls drop in on the hero. Till, deafening the ringing sounds, asks Makyou if they will go explore the lake again today. He replies that they will not go today. He decided to read. The book he took from the adventurer turned out to be a history book, and this is what he learned from its contents. In the past, there was a country on these lands, but suddenly, for unknown reasons, people began to disappear en masse. The flying islands were devoured by huge monsters, a religion emerged in which deer were considered messengers of God, and natural disasters were constantly occurring here. The hero suggests that perhaps this cave was a refuge. Now he is interested in Eastern Kiner, where the girl comes from. From the book he learns that Eastern Kiner is a fertile land, but it seems that these lands are often subject to uprisings and wars. Makyou concludes that it seems that it was the adventurers who started the civil war. In one of the illustrations in the book, he sees heroes who have reclaimed their lands. The hero thinks about it and says out loud that he doesn't like it. Now he has a premonition of an approaching storm. The heroes return to the village bordering their lands again. The man tells Makyou no, and continues that as he can see, no one is sending them anywhere. The hero says that yesterday a noble warrior woman came to him and said that there was a rebellion in the neighboring territory. The warrior says that he himself heard about it from adventurers, but those lands are too far away. He suggests that the rebellion has most likely been suppressed, so the hero shouldn't worry about it. After saying this, Makyou looks at him silently. After they finish their business, the boy and girl run back. The hero tells Till that maybe the man is right. The demoness silently ponders these words, then she has an idea and calls him by name. A downpour falls upon the demonic lands. The heroes try to get back to the cave, running on wet and slippery rocks. Makyou curses and says that it is a very powerful rainstorm. Near the cave they notice a priestess who is dragging bags with something inside. Jennifer calls out the hero by name, and she herself is carrying a heavy bag. The boy realizes that she has already covered the passage with sandbags. The girl says that the cave is safe for now, but if the rain does not stop, their fields will have a hard time. Makyou is surprised and says that she is right. He needs to check how things are going. He runs away quickly. The crops are flooded by a huge stream of water. The guy sees this and thinks that the water level is rising. At this rate, they will definitely be flooded. He decides to redirect the flow of earth magic. With this magic, he lifts the ground where his crops are and jumps from this elevation. The rain does not even think of ending. The boy returns to the cave. The priestess asks how things are. He replies that not much. He saved the field, but everything else is flooded, so he won't be able to expand the farm. The girls look at this in surprise. Makyou explains that for a while, they will have to exchange goods for vegetables and wheat. He says that it continued to rain all day long, and the next morning it became even heavier. Till returned from reconnaissance, and said that a hurricane had started. The hero thinks that since he can't go outside now, he will make a homemade trap based on PJ's magic circle. He starts to implement this plan. He comments out loud on each action. First, the guy draws a magic circle on a piece of wood and does not complete one line so that it does not explode right there. The hero imagines a large monster that gets caught in an explosion. He suggests that this piece of wood could be placed under fallen leaves so that the monster's legs would be torn off. Then he hears a loud noise and jumps up in surprise. Makyou turns around and asks what the hell that is. Girls run up to the entrance. Jennifer calls him here to them. A huge black mountain can be seen behind the trees. The guy asks in bewilderment where this mountain came from. The girls also look at it in shock. Jennifer calls him by name. Till starts to say that this mountain. The hero finishes by saying that it moves. Lightning strikes the ground. The wind swirls around this unknown object. The hurricane uproots trees. The lightning grows larger. Makyou says that there is a strong wind and lightning around this mountain. The monsters cannot cope with this wind. They run away in fear even further. The hero remembers that this was described in PJ's notebook. He asks in shock if this is really the huge monster that appears every 3 months. He screams out loud that he is a walking disaster. He does not understand why no one has seen him before. Here the body of a huge bear flies at the heroes. The heroes are surprised. They barely have time to jump back. The guy groans. The bodies of other monsters fall nearby. On the other side, Makyou sees a crocodile and a snake that are on fire from a lightning strike. The guy says that the tornado lifts the monsters and then strikes them with lightning. The hero looks around the cave and realizes that part of it has already collapsed. He realizes that if they stay in it, they could be buried alive. He sees the demons fleeing north. He shouts out loud to Till and Jennifer to get ready. They too will be heading north. The wind around the monster begins to pick up, and he lifts his legs even higher. The hero asks Till to use magic on her legs, because they will have to run as fast as possible. Then he throws Jennifer on his back and asks her to tie herself with a rope. The girl asks for forgiveness. He calls everyone forward. The heroes quickly flee from the approaching hurricane. The earth around them is destroyed and trees are torn out by the roots. The monsters continue to fall. The ground splits. The heroes jump on the rocks. Makyou thinks about how they continue to move north. The rain does not stop. Finally, the guy announces that they have reached the wasteland. He is silent and looks in shock at the picture in front of him. Till is breathing heavily. The monsters continue to smoke and are struck by lightning. Makyou feels like it's the end of the world. The hero says that the wasteland is no good either, so he suggests going back to the forest. Everyone is breathing heavily. Makyou thinks that they just need to find shelter. The pieces of wood break under his feet, and he and the girl on his shoulders begin to fall into the void. The hero asks in surprise what happened. Then they begin to fall rapidly and scream in horror. Finally they land. The guy says he's in pain. He looks up and then around. He thinks it looks like an old well or ruins left by people who lived here long ago. Makyou tries to stand up and winces in pain. The guy looks at his ankle and thinks it's broken. Jennifer starts to untie herself and warns him about it. Makyou leans heavily against the wall and thinks that at least they are sheltered from the rain and wind. Till looks from above. She calls the hero by name. He answers that they are alive. The demoness smiles with joy. She also goes down and takes branches for firewood with her. The girl puts them together and says that the sky has stopped going biddy-ish, biddy-ish. The fire flares up. Everyone sits around it. Sounds are heard behind the hero. He thinks that even here the steps of the monster can be heard. The priestess bows slightly. She says she thought she was going to die and asks to be forgiven for holding them back. The guy says, that's okay, no one expected it to be her. His voice breaks. He faints. The girls call his name. The sun shines through the hole, water drips. Makyou is called, asked to wake up. He hears the full phrase only for the second time. The hero opens his eyes with difficulty. Till calls him by name even more angrily. Makyou asks how long he slept, then looks surprised and asks if his leg is okay. The priestess replies that she cast a healing spell on it. Till at this time points into the darkness. She calls everyone there. The hero stands up and screams in surprise. Then he takes the torch and with the priestess goes after the demoness. He looks around and wonders if this is a well, or if there is underground water running through here. In the cave, they discover glowing mushrooms. He and Till scream and say how beautiful it is. Makyou starts looking around, asks a rhetorical question about what kind of glowing mushroom it is, and then asks not to touch it. Then they discover an underground lake. The hero has difficulty seeing everything in the darkness. Till hands him something, calls his name, and says that this is that thing. He is surprised and understands what it is. It's the same stone with the pattern. Makyou asks where she found it. The girl says that the skeleton has it. Deep in the cave sits a skeleton in a cloak. The guy asks if this is another corpse. Till says that he needs to be examined, maybe he left something behind. The heroes find another book. Makyou offers to examine it. The priestess guesses what it is. She says that it is a guide that beginning adventurers read, but the book looks very old. In the book, they find that stone. Under its image, they read the inscription, "Never lose the key to the dungeon." Makyou looks closely at the object and asks again if this is really the key to the dungeon. Till asks what kind of dungeon it is. The guy replies that he has never been there. Jennifer says that she was part of the capital group and they were going to the deepest part. The hero continues to study the guide. He says that there is some note left at the end. It says, "If the monster steals the dungeon, everything will be over." Everyone looks at her questioningly. Makyou asks how one can steal a dungeon. The priestess thinks about it, but Till just remains silent. The demoness screams that it is impossible. The hero suggests getting out of here quickly. He realizes that he no longer hears the steps of the giant monster. Makyou manages to get out of the well. He stretches a rope down, and the girls climb up. The guy notes that it's good that the sky has cleared and the giant monster has disappeared too. There are fallen trees all around. The hero says it's a mess. He hopes the local terrain hasn't changed much. He suggests that everyone go home. Lifeless monster bodies lie between the trees. Till calls the guy by name. She says that they want to eat. Jennifer sheepishly supports her. Makyou thinks that they really haven't eaten anything since yesterday, but there is a problem. He doesn't want to eat these corpses at all, so he picks up some fruit and asks the girls to just eat it. Till and Jennifer agree. They return to their cave together. Makyou says there's a real pogrom there. He tells the girls that the room is full of stones and debris, and looking at this, he already feels tired. The demoness checks the supplies and says that the wheat has remained dry. The priestess suggests that they restore order so that it can be lived in. Evening comes, the hero falls from exhaustion and says that they finally have a place to sleep. Till falls on the bed next to him and immediately falls asleep. Jennifer asks her to forgive her because she is about to pass out too. Makyou covers himself with a blanket and thinks that he wants to wash himself, but he can't. He's going to fall asleep too. His eyes slowly close and his thoughts are interrupted. He is awakened by a sudden movement. The guy jumps up and wonders in surprise what happened. It seems to him that something is moving in his pocket. He takes out a coin, which keeps rattling. The hero remembers that this is the coin Jennifer gave him. She supposedly took it from the zombie. He says out loud that it is pulsating like a heart. The coin continues to thump and then jumps out of his hands. Makyou gasps. The coin continues to roll along the ground. The hero runs after it, saying that he doesn't need to lose it. He tries to catch it, but the coin flies higher. The guy tries to grab her several times. He calls her, groans and curses with anger. The hero continues to run after it and shouts after it, asking if it has rolled too far. The coin approaches the water. The guy is surprised and shouts that there is a swamp there. He curses and tries to grab it again. The coin flies out of his hands and falls into the water. Makyou screams silently. He starts searching in the water and asks if she is making fun of him. Then he finds a coin and sees someone appear from the water. A translucent elf emerges from the water. Makyou opens her mouth again in shock. The elf is silent, then says a word, there, turns around, walks on the water, and disappears. The hero continues to scream silently. The next day, the guy tells what happened to him. He says that there was a translucent ghost of an elf. The girls listen to him silently. Till starts laughing. She points her finger at the hero and asks again if there really was a ghost there, if Makyou was scared. Jennifer continues to watch silently. The guy yells at the demoness to stop laughing. She continues to laugh and asks how anyone can be afraid of a translucent silhouette. The priestess asks if he did something bad to her in life. The guy replies that he doesn't think so. Jennifer explains that everything is fine then, you just need to sprinkle her with holy water. The hero is surprised and asks if she really knows how to make holy water. The girl replies that she is a priestess. She reads the spell and blesses the water. She becomes transparent. Jennifer asks if her quantity is enough. Makyou happily says that it is enough. He thinks that her prayers and gestures are exquisite, like a true priestess, although she is a true priestess. He laughs and says that now he can put the coin in the holy water. This he does. The girls watch him. They spent the rest of the day restoring the cave. They hauled, cleaned, washed. Makyou finds that all food supplies have been destroyed. The priestess calls out to him. She shows the room with the previous owner's things. The hero is surprised that PJ's equipment was not damaged at all. Jennifer suggests that it might be adamantite. The guy asks again. She explains that adamantite is a very hard metal, so good that even close friends can start a fight over a weapon made of adamantite. Makyou notices that PJ lived here alone, so he had no friends. Then he is called by his name, Till. She shows that the pentagram has been knocked down. The hero gasps. At this moment, the drawing begins to glow. The guy looks at it in horror. He thinks that it was destroyed during the attack of the giant monster. It is not in perfect shape and is almost activated. The hero leads the girls out of the room, saying that it is dangerous to use this room for now. They sigh heavily in response. It is getting dark outside, and something is happening tonight. The coin starts to jingle in the jar. Makyou shouts in surprise that the coin is moving again. The holy water didn't help them. It keeps banging against the walls. The boy asks if the elf spirit is calling her. He wonders if this will happen every night. He curses again. Makyou grabs the can and asks her to calm down quickly. She continues to hit the cork. The guy approaches the swamp with her and thinks whether to go further. He reasons that he has gone quite far, so he might get lost on the way home. Makyou steps on some leaves and hears a mooing sound from underneath them. The hero looks down in surprise, noticing something unusual under his feet. His gaze is focused on the foliage, as if he is trying to understand what is happening and solve the riddle. There is caution and curiosity in his eyes. The protagonist takes a cautious step back, doubting that what he sees is not an optical illusion. He hesitates, listening to every rustle and trying to understand the strange feeling of anxiety. His mind is tense, ready for the unexpected. A moment later, the protagonist steps on the pile of leaves again to test his suspicions and fears. There is a clear response from his foot under the leaves, a rustling sound and a slight movement. He nods to himself, confirming his suspicions. Makyou is now fully convinced that there really is someone hiding in the nearby foliage. He drops to one knee to get a better look at the area and to be closer to the potential threat. He slowly begins to sweep the leaves with his hand. At first he can't say a word, he just stands there, staring at a point in front of him. His face reflects a mixture of surprise and anxiety, mixed with confusion. Thoughts are spinning in his head about what he's about to see. In the foliage, there appears an elf with long ears, dressed in light clothes, with mysterious drawings on her hands. She lies unconscious, showing no signs of life, like a lost soul in the forest. The hero rises to his feet and instantly recognizes her as the elf from yesterday, who immediately caught his attention. His expression immediately becomes serious and focused. Makyou doesn't know what to think. Before the elf looked like a ghost, and now she looks quite alive, although weakly. The assumption arises that it could be a zombie or something similar. A weak, almost barely alive girl tries to ask for help, stumbling and losing strength. She drawls that she is alive and needs support, barely maintaining consciousness. Her voice trembles from fatigue. The hero's gaze falls on the bottle of water he is holding. He notices that the coin inside the bottle has calmed down, which seems strange and important to him. The protagonist carefully lifts the girl up so she can drink some water. He brings the bottle to her lips while carefully checking her condition. The elf opens her mouth and starts drinking, holding the bottle in her hands. She drinks so greedily that the water runs down her face, showing her intense thirst. She has already managed to stand up, although her short hair covers her eyes. She behaves cautiously, keeping to herself, and with difficulty utters words of gratitude. The hero pays attention to her tall stature, and cannot help but notice that she stands out among ordinary people. This arouses his additional interest. The protagonist wants to know where she comes from. At the same time, the elf holds back and looks at him warily, not revealing all the details right away. Water runs down her skin, but she answers that she comes from the land of the elves, located beyond the mountains. Her voice is quiet but confident. Makyou looks at her carefully and asks if this country is beyond the snowy mountains. The next question is about her name. The girl calls herself Helgen Toulon, or simply Heli. She answers slowly and haltingly, as if the words are difficult for her. Makyou and Heli stand facing each other. He introduces himself as the owner of these lands and notices that she looks very tired. He suggests that she go to them. She kneels down and lowers her head a little. She begins to tell how she couldn't move because the ground seemed to swallow her. The girl says that she was looking for help with her spiritual body and that she was lucky she came across the landowner. At the same time, she smiles, despite her fatigue. The protagonist understands that he has encountered spiritual magic and is convinced that it is not a ghost. His doubts gradually disappear. Makyou looks down at her and asks if she can stand up, waiting for an affirmative answer, ready to help if needed. The protagonist carefully lifts Heli up and holds her so she doesn't fall. He puts her hand on his shoulder and they start walking together. The hero notices a cut on her shoulder and tells her about it. The girl looks at the wound in surprise, as if she had not immediately realized it. They carefully examine the wounds on her shoulder. Deep cut marks are visible. This causes the hero serious concern. The protagonist notices a strange mark with traces of a knife. For now he is silent and does not talk about it, but this fact interests him. Makyou is stunned by what he sees. His surprise is hard to hide. He doesn't expect to see such marks on the girl's shoulder. The hero looks at Heli and thinks that she might be a runaway slave. He asks her directly about it, watching her reaction. Heli vehemently denies being a slave, saying she ran away to escape state slavery, her voice full of determination. She asks him back whether she was a criminal. The hero looks at her with suspicion, assessing the possible risk. The girl answers in the negative. She was just trying to stop a senseless war. Her words sound sincere and heartfelt. The hero concludes that this is treason and considers her a slave criminal. His opinion is tough. He is in no hurry to change his attitude. Heli angrily protests that she is not a traitor. She says that she was persecuted and forced to flee her country. The girl kneels down, expressing her reluctance to cause trouble. She asks the protagonist to allow her to temporarily stay on his territory. The protagonist is stunned by such a request and cannot immediately respond. His reaction is serious and shows inner doubt. The hero wonders if she will be able to pay the rent for living there. This is an important question for him. He is waiting for an honest answer. Ahead, a dark cave is visible, with no light coming from it. The place seems mysterious and a little disturbing. The two girls look towards the exit, their gaze is wary. They are silent, watching what is happening. Heli introduces herself to them and expresses her joy at meeting them. The girls perceive her as narcissistic. Their reactions are ambiguous. The protagonist scratches his head and notices that a group of outcasts has gathered. He does not understand why this place attracts such individuals. The girls carefully examine Heli, assessing her appearance and behavior. He sighed heavily and thought to himself with obvious irritation that now he had another neighbor, to whom a sea of problems and troubles would certainly be added. He felt slightly tired. The thought flashed through his mind that he had no idea what exactly this strange, eccentric elf would bring, how many problems and difficulties she would cause that he would have to deal with in the near future. There was a plate of an unusual shape in front of him. The hero looked down at his plate and calmly said that, although it was modest, it was still a meal that would allow him to get a little full and maintain his strength during this difficult time. It was clear that he was trying to cheer up. The girl with the little horns responded that the wheat was already gone, and now they would not be able to make any more cakes. The hero thought seriously about the consequences of this and began to ponder. Thinking about everything that was happening, Makyou realized that things were going really badly. He guessed that because of the huge magical monster that had recently appeared and caused serious damage to their supplies, almost everything had been washed away by the water. The girl suggested going to the training camp to exchange resources and supplies. Heli stood nearby, carefully watching the conversation and assessing how much this idea could help them. The protagonist finished eating the flatbread and thought about what they would have to take with them, since almost all the food and weapons had become unusable. In order to survive, they would have to stock up on everything they needed for further campaigns. With the remaining supplies, she decided that she could try to make a staff, as it would be the easiest to make. She also included the skins of slain monsters and ingredients suitable for making potions. Makyou sat by the fire, pondering the proposed plan. He asked the girl if she knew anything about pharmaceuticals and could help in making healing potions, hoping that this would ease their situation. The girl thought for a moment and admitted that she was a little familiar with pharmaceuticals, but did not have deep knowledge in this area, and did not know how to create something that could be sold profitably. Both heroes agreed that they would work specifically on potions, and decided to focus on creating specifically elven healing potions that could be in demand and would allow them to acquire the necessary resources. The elf was looking at a stone lying nearby when suddenly someone called her and distracted her from her thoughts, forcing her to pay attention to what was happening around her again. Makyou suggested that they could make the same healing potions that Healy had previously made, believing that it would be useful and help them establish trade with the other villagers. The elf's gaze became cunning and she laughed, closing her eyes. Her reaction showed that she liked the idea and was ready to make an effort to do everything as best as possible and help the whole company. Healy agreed to the proposal and said that it was very simple for her, and she was willing to make potions as payment for living in this place, which was a good compromise for all involved. She immediately headed towards the exit of the cave, pointing with her hand in the direction and intending to go in search of the necessary ingredients. The companions only asked her to be careful because the forest was full of dangers. The whole company froze, as if in a stupor. The girls continued to eat, chewing their food slowly, and the main character only thought that everything was happening exactly as he expected, and that many trials awaited them ahead. The protagonist looked down at the elf, who was lying on the ground making strange sounds while scorpions crawled over her body. He only added tiredly that he always had problems with her. Healy was shocked and looked at the hero and the scorpion in his hand, unable to say a word. The protagonist calmly held the scorpion and asked if they were both alive, hoping to get at least some kind of answer. Hearing the silence, the hero stopped trying to get an answer and turned to Till with a question. Would she like to go with him to collect magic stones to make a staff? To which she responded with consent, raising the staff. Jennifer was tasked with collecting edible plants and materials from around the cave to boost the team's supplies and prepare ingredients for potions and food, which was essential to their survival. Healy was already sitting in the cave, having calmed down a bit, and agreed to start preparing potions from the collected plants, which became an important task and brought a sense of some order and control over the situation. The heroes got to work. Till and the main character walked into the forest, carefully examining the surroundings. He noted that after the appearance of the giant magical monster, the number of dangerous creatures decreased and thought. As time went on, night fell and the forest became shrouded in darkness. All the stones, plants, animals, and threads collected during the day were laid out on the ground of the cave. All of this served as the basis for creating the necessary items and potions that could help them survive in the future. Jennifer was happy about such a rich catch, clapping her hands. She showed her support and encouragement to all members of the team, giving them strength to continue the fight. She especially liked the arachne thread. After examining it, she declared that it was an excellent barter material that could bring them good resources and profitable deals, which raised the company's morale. Healy demonstrated her medicinal potions, holding out a vessel with a cloth lid, wrapped in threads, and asked to keep the herbs for evaluation and further use. The protagonist reminded the elf that if she couldn't pay for her stay, he would be forced to kick her out, but if she could live as long as she wanted. These words made her think about her responsibility. After these words, the hero set off for the training camp. He ordered 2 girls to watch the house in his absence, so that no one would break in and everything would remain safe. The girls wished him luck, saying goodbye to him warmly and hoping for a speedy return, because each of them understood the importance of the task ahead. The protagonist mentally made a shopping list. He wanted to ask for more vegetables, fruits, and construction tools to improve his living conditions and prepare for the future. In the distance, the camp where the exchange of resources took place appeared. Wooden houses, watchtowers, and a bridge gave the impression of a fortified settlement, ready to repel external threats. With the backpack on his shoulder containing the goods for exchange, Makyou noticed that the atmosphere was becoming strange and disturbing, as if there was something dangerous lurking around the corner. He and the hooded girl were looking towards the wooden spears sticking out of the ground. A clear sign of protection or warning of a possible threat made them be on guard. The fights took place in a circle of soldiers that resembled an arena. One of the fighters fought a man in light clothing, demonstrating impressive speed and agility. The man made a swift dash towards one of the soldiers. The dagger in his left hand instantly cut through the air, much faster than the soldier's sword, due to its lightness and maneuverability. The adventurer watched the fight, trying to figure out if it was a training session and who the participants really were, a child or an adult woman, since the movements were very fast and precise. The captain approached them. He greeted the hero cordially, having learned that he had come to the camp again, expressing friendliness and readiness to cooperate. The company greets the captain and asks what caused the noise and fuss, because it was important for all of them to know the situation and the reasons for the concern. The captain, in steel armor with his arms crossed, explained that it was an exercise to calm the people who were in the grip of fear and anxiety after the recent events. He invited the protagonist to listen to the news about the war, showing interest in his thoughts and views on the development of the situation at the front. The talk of war made Makyou feel uneasy, and he refused to participate in the conversation. Instead, he asked to exchange goods, since food had almost completely disappeared after the disaster. The captain agreed to the exchange with understanding, which meant the beginning of mutually beneficial cooperation between them and the opportunity to strengthen their positions. Inside the building, the hero examined the goods. He especially liked the arachne thread, which was offered to be exchanged for food and construction tools, such as a saw, hammer, and needles, which the team was sorely lacking. The man said with a serious expression that he had important information regarding the demonic realm that could be useful and interesting to the hero, hinting at upcoming events. These words of the captain alerted the protagonist, causing him anxiety and mistrust. He realized that the conversation was taking a serious turn and an important tone. The officer continued, asking if the protagonist remembered that there was a civil war going on in eastern Kenya. The adventurer remembered that a noblewoman warrior had come to the magic zone for a staff. The map showed the kingdom of Astinia. The warriors' lands are located in eastern Kenya, and the elves intervened in a civil war between nobles and adventurers. The protagonist asked an important question about the reasons for the elven invasion, seeking to better understand their motives and connection to the current conflict. He wanted to find out what exactly prompted the elven forces to intervene in these lands. In response, he heard a possible reason for the invasion. The elves seek to reclaim the lands of their ancestors, despite the fact that times have changed. Old grievances and historical ties still play a major role in the conflict. The protagonist immediately remembered Healy, found in the foliage, who, as is known, is trying to stop the war between elves and humans. Her goals were peaceful, despite the escalating situation. To his remark that other people were already living in these lands, the captain replied that the elves had been driven out of these territories anyway. The past could not be changed, and the struggle for control remained fierce. This was part of the conflict. However, the adventurers were more successful than the nobles in their battles with the elves, which resulted in them losing their former position and influence. This changed the balance of power in the territory and affected events. Makyou had no idea that such a thing could be possible, but the captain's opinion was that this territory was warlike, and the strongest could easily win the support of the people. From the story, the hero concluded that these lands are now under the control of adventurers who hold power and influence what is happening. Their role has become key in the balance of power and the fate of the region. Without going into many details, the captain explained that they were now being controlled by a nobleman who had incited the adventurers and had his own interests in this conflict. The nobleman's image gave off a dark aura. He claimed that the demonic realm belonged to him. The officer assumed that the nobleman had learned of the staff's power and wanted to obtain it at any cost. The hero and the girl frowned at what they heard, feeling alarm and discontent, because the news they heard was far from comforting and worried them both. The hero's hand slowly reached into his bag and he pulled out a piece of paper, the only proof that the land really belonged to him by right. The captain explained to the protagonist that this document, issued by the agency, does not have a royal signature and therefore does not have any special legal force. He could easily lose the case. After these words, the hero was shocked. Tears seemed to be visible on his face. He could not believe what was happening, being in complete confusion. The demon realm has long been a gray zone, a buffer zone between countries, which makes it both extremely convenient and highly controversial. Even the captain wanted it to be under the control of adventurers. Makyou wanted to make sure that the captain was on his side, but getting a clear affirmative answer was not so easy. The captain remained in some doubt. He bowed his head and began to explain that the royal army would only be able to intervene if the Eastern army went against the royal family, and the Eastern army was part of the kingdom of Astinia. The protagonist, sitting opposite, realized that the army also had its own internal problems and conflicts that prevented them from acting in a coordinated manner. The protagonist is once again reminded that someone has their eye on his land, which forces him to be on guard and prepare to defend his property. Makyou smiled and suggested that if someone appeared on his territory without permission, he would simply drive away the uninvited guests without giving them a chance. The captain suggested that such actions could aggravate the situation, and advised to negotiate with the center to obtain official land titles for legal protection. The three of them walked out of the headquarters, heading towards the exit. Makyou had his backpack on his back again. The officer accompanied them, walking next to them and carefully examining the surroundings. The guards had already knocked the girl who had previously fought with the dagger to the ground, and now she lay on the ground, powerless, unable to resist. Turning over his left shoulder, the captain offered to take the girl with him as a token of gratitude for her cooperation, thereby making her fate easier. The girl was very tired, her clothes were torn, and sweat was running down her forehead. She could not stay on her feet, so the guards carried her by the arms. She was sent by the new ruler of the Eastern Empire, so if the protagonist takes her under his wing, he will be able to dispose of her at his own discretion. The captain leaned towards the protagonist's ear and quietly explained that keeping a woman in the camp was very difficult because it could lead to all sorts of trouble. Makyou himself suggested that perhaps she was a former noblewoman, since she was sent by the current ruler, and this could spark a conflict in his house. After thinking this, he lost face. He was told that she was now just a woman and no longer a noblewoman, and that if she did not leave the demonic realm, no one would know of her origin. The protagonist looked closely at the girl while she lay powerless in the arms of the guards, and she, in turn, looked down tiredly, without raising her eyes. The girl found the strength within herself and slowly raised her head, as if trying to collect her thoughts and understand what was happening around her. They didn't recognize each other right away, but it soon became clear that this was the same girl who came for the staff. Only now she had a short haircut, and she recognized him thanks to her connection with the demonic realm. Till suddenly intervened in their argument, uttering the main character's name, which broke the tense pause in the conversation. Her words carried weight and immediately changed the course of the conversation. Everyone present took notice. She reported that the demonic realm was in decline and that there was always work for every pair of hands. Her tone was calm, but full of confidence. It sounded like a call to unity and action. The girl with short hair looked at Till carefully and began to guess why she was hiding her true nature. Her gaze expressed curiosity and wariness. Before she could really express her thoughts, the girl was suddenly grabbed by the back of the head by the hero. He quickly took control of the situation, demonstrating determination and strength. This moment showed the tension between them. He quickly put her on his back, saying that they were taking her, and the backpack with supplies was already thrown over Till's shoulders. They ran further and further, trying not to let anyone guess and not allow themselves to be pursued. In the distance, the captain said goodbye. Their cave was already visible, and upon returning from their journey, they were met by Jennifer and Healy with worried but joyful faces. The elf pointed and asked who the girl was, who was still lying on the protagonist's back, clearly exhausted and without strength. The girl, still exhausted, slumped against Makyou, and he calmly said that she was now under his protection and he had received her. She lifted her head slightly from Makyou's shoulders, trying to concentrate and get her bearings. Her gaze was fixed on a point, as if she was trying to collect her thoughts and understand what would happen next. She looked at Till, but the elf herself could not understand what was going on and watched what was happening with surprise. The girl continued to look at her and, unexpectedly, exclaimed her name, which caused a sharp reaction. A fight immediately began. The girl knocked down the elf, and Healy tried to remove her hand from her throat with one hand and defended herself from the blow with the other. She wanted to understand what was happening, but the protagonist did not like the situation. He intervened, pushing them apart with his hands and covering their faces with his palms so that they could not continue fighting. He sternly said that fighting between servants was unacceptable. Both girls were unhappy with these words. They put their fists down in confusion, trying to comprehend their actions. In one voice they screamed that they were still not anyone's servants, and the voices were so loud that the main character covered his ears with his hands so as not to hear the noise. These words of the captain alerted the protagonist, causing him anxiety and mistrust. He realized that the conversation was taking a serious turn and an important tone. Of course, I will make the text more detailed in order to convey the atmosphere and details, while maintaining the clarity and logic of the narrative. The adventurer reminded all the residents of the house of an important rule. If any of them starts to act up or refuses to pay for accommodation, such a person will be thrown out without further ado. In the meantime, everyone must coexist peacefully and live together, maintaining order and discipline. Meanwhile, the girls continued to clash with each other, butting heads over disagreements and arguments. And Makyou and Till, despite the tense situation, went to build a new house, a place where they would all live. The next day, the main character woke up early and the first thing he did was greet all the residents of the house. He watched what was happening around him with keen interest, trying to understand how to improve relations in the team now. He noticed Sylvia and Healy standing in line, sternly scolding Jennifer, who was cooking over a fire. In unison, both girls repeated that hotter meant better. Jennifer looked at them in despair, not knowing how to please. The main character stood in a slight stupor, surprised at how quickly these two friends and rivals were able to become friends and unite in their views. Then all the heroes gathered in the forest. It was time to go hunting to get food and necessary materials for life. Makyou put on his backpack, checked his equipment, and was ready for the hike. All the girls raised their hands in agreement and readiness to set off on the journey together. After some time, they encountered a troll. Till and Makyou stood aside, watching the fight, while Sylvia, armed with a hammer, fought the huge monster alone. From their fight, the ground literally flew into pieces. The protagonist couldn't help but notice that Sylvia was indeed a skilled fighter, and demonstrated strength and agility in battle. He suddenly turned back, as if expecting to see something else. At that moment, the giant turtle lifted Helgen off the ground, which caused her a great shock. She did not feel the lift because she was grabbed by the cloak, but with cries of panic, she began to ask for help, fearing that she would be eaten. She didn't notice the size of the turtle, which was tens of times bigger than her. However, Till and Makyou clearly saw the danger of what was happening. The protagonist and Till looked at the situation from the ground. Makyou called the girl's name loudly to push Till into action. Till instantly jumped towards the turtle and cast a spell that could not be translated into human language. As a result, the animal froze, as if petrified. The protagonist quickly followed her, took the sword, and with one powerful blow cut off the turtle's head. Healy flew down, and a stream of blood gushed out of the severed head like a fountain. There was so much blood that it completely covered Sylvia, leaving not a single clean spot on her body. When the head fell to the ground, Healy landed in pain. Sylvia stood there, covered in blood, in shock. The hero quickly apologized to her. He asked Till to help her, to take her to the river and help her wash, and at the same time find new clothes. Till agreed without hesitation. Healy also pointed to her clothes, stained with blood, and said that she also needed help cleaning it. The hero responded with kind and encouraging words. While the girls were away, Makyou decided to make soup from turtle meat. A cauldron was on the fire, in which the aromatic broth was simmering. As soon as he tried a spoon, he was called. It was a girl with horns who silently showed him what had happened. She hurried to show the dead horse lying nearby on its side, with the saddle. Its belly was cut up, and everything around was covered in blood. The adventurer came closer and confirmed that it was indeed the corpse of a horse. The saddle suggested that someone had ridden it, and Jennifer added that 2 more corpses were visible nearby. Makyou noticed a bag containing a sword and traces of blood, which led him to believe that there was an attack by invaders. He reached into his bag, found the letter, and, after reading it, found himself in a stupor. Above their heads hung a huge hive of wasps, so large that it was many times larger than them. The hero found out that it was a nest of wasps. Seeing the dead horse and the swarm of wasps, Makyou concluded that the riders had most likely been torn apart. Healy asked what to do now. Since it was no longer possible to help, the suggestion was made to just leave and eat. The elf was surprised by this proposal. Makyou looked closely at the girl's body and noticed that it was covered in tattoos. He looked closely at her shoulders and legs. She admitted that these are not tattoos, but seals that contain a powerful curse, making it almost impossible for her to use magic. Looking down, she sadly admitted that this was very upsetting to her, because now magic was unavailable. At that moment, other girls approached them, having heard the elf's words, and showed interest. Jennifer was scared when they came too close. They reassured her. If the curse did not interfere with her life, there were no problems. Makyou, as the landowner, was pleased that she made potions to sell. Everyone said that no one was afraid of her curse, because one of them was from the demon race, and the other also used magic minimally. Sylvia revealed that she could use magic to not feel pain or to increase her physical abilities for a short time. The hero watched this with a smile. He thought that they were carefree and cheerful girls, and crumpled the letter, turning it into a ball. The letter fell to the ground, and on the corner were words stating their eviction from the territory. Healy quietly woke Makyou up, gently touching his shoulder so as not to wake the others. She felt that the time had come to act, and that an important event should not slip away. Her eyes were shining with excitement. He woke up, slowly opening one eye, trying to understand what was happening and why he had been woken up so early. Sleep still held him in its arms, but consciousness was slowly returning. There was tension in the air. The character jumped up abruptly, as the elf's sudden appearance had frightened him greatly. The girls immediately sat down next to him, trying to calm him down and support him. The atmosphere was filled with anxiety and anticipation. She said that she had learned from Till about palm juice, which could be used for potion vessels, and was surprised that she had not been told about it before. Makyou, rubbing his eyes from fatigue, replied that in such heat it is better to make vessels from clay. According to him, clay retains coolness well and helps keep water fresh longer. The elf nodded and quietly left, saying that she understood the advice and would go try other options for creating vessels. Her face expressed determination and readiness to experiment. She was full of enthusiasm and desire to help. Makyou stopped her at the threshold, surprised that she had woken him up so early to ask such a question. He hadn't expected it to be so important to her. His eyes expressed confusion and slight irritation. The elf immediately remembered that this was not all. Together with Till, they saw something strange near the western stream, which greatly alarmed the hero. She added that this situation seemed dangerous and required the attention of the entire team. She said that they saw a living dead man moving among the trees. This phenomenon was frightening and inexplicable. The girls understood that it could be a harbinger of trouble. Makyou and the girls ran into the forest to check this information. They soon met Till, who pointed her finger into the thicket. She looked worried and waited for their reaction. The disfigured body, deprived of a part of its human appearance, slowly crawled forward on the ground. It made muffled sounds, but no clear speech came from it. This picture was eerie and alarming. It moved in the opposite direction from the heroes, which allowed them to notice characteristic details. In particular, the body was missing half of its torso, which increased the horror of what was happening. The idea occurred to the hero that even though the dead man was not causing harm to anyone, it was better to burn him. He understood that leaving such a body was dangerous because of the risk of spreading the infection. Safety was more important. Jennifer looked closely at the body and noticed something odd about its appearance. Her eyes narrowed, trying to figure out what it was that made this creature stand out from the rest. Memories and anxiety bubbled up inside her. As the body slowly crawled, Jennifer remembered that she had defeated this dead man before, the only one she had ever defeated in these lands. This thought gave her confidence and determination. At first, the protagonist did not remember him until Jennifer reminded him that she had once given him a gold coin in advance. After this phrase, Makyou's jaw dropped. The memory struck him as unexpected. In any case, no one wanted the zombie virus to spread around the area, so the hero asked Till to burn the body. This was necessary to prevent an epidemic. The decision was made quickly and without hesitation. The elf asked what kind of coin the dead man was holding. The hero himself did not really understand what kind of gold coin it was that was found with Healy's body. This added to the mystery and required an explanation. The elf yelled at him, saying that he should have warned everyone about this. She was angry about the lack of information and feared the consequences. Her voice was stern and demanding. There was a guess that it was an elf adventurer, but now it is impossible to know due to the strong changes in the body during the transformation. Elven ears were difficult to see among the wounds and damage. Or maybe it was a comrade who came to these parts in search of a mysterious city. His fate was unknown, and this caused anxiety in the team. Everyone thought about possible scenarios. They took out a jar of liquid containing a coin. The girl carefully took it out, examined it carefully, and thought about the meaning of this artifact. It was important for her to understand its origin. After examining the coin carefully, she realized that it was unusual and unlikely to be counterfeit. It was assumed that this zombie was the one who had managed to reach Midgard. This discovery could change a lot. It turned out that Midgard was the name of a city central to legends and myths. This information added weight to their investigation. The city was the key to the solution. The city of the magical kingdom of Yggdrasil, Midgard. It is believed that everyone from children to old people knew how to use magic. Thanks to powerful artifacts, the city was more developed than many other countries of that time. The kingdom also traded with the Elven country, allowing for cultural and economic ties to be maintained. The team wanted to know when records of the city disappeared, deepening their understanding of history. Sylvia said that she had also read about this in a history book. There had once been a state in these parts. Her words confirmed the importance of the facts found. This added confidence in their mission. Helly grabbed Sylvia by the shoulders and asked where the book was now. The question was full of impatience and hope for further discoveries. The book could shed light on many mysteries. The protagonist said that he bought the book from a girl with short hair and asked everyone to wait. He understood the value of the source and intended to study it with the team. This was a step forward in their search. He took out a book that said, "In these parts there was a country. The inhabitants suddenly disappeared en masse, after which the island was swallowed up by a giant monster, and there was a different religion." The protagonist read the main content of the book. Then the elf took the book and on the last page noticed the initials of the diary and the description of the runes. The hero said that he found a diary on a man he was holding in his hands. His lifeless body had been lying in a cave for a long time, and only bones remained. Together with the girl with horns, the hero found the island where Peter Jefferson's grave rested. At that time, Till was busy eating and did not interfere in the conversation. The other girls listened attentively, trying to understand the connection. It became unclear to the elf, if Peter Jefferson was buried on the island, then who was holding the diary? She thought about it, watching the conversation. This question caused her doubts and anxiety. Initially, the hero thought so too, but decided to take a closer look at the details. He realized that there were inscriptions on the diary and next to the magic circle that needed to be studied. This gave a new perspective on the mystery. He looked at the last page of the diary he showed and the writings near the magic circle. These details seemed important to him and were different from each other. They contained important information. When Helly learned this, she realized that the diary had been written by two different people. This explained the discrepancies and added to the mystery. This conclusion confirmed the complexity of the story. This was no longer news to the protagonist, so he sat down to eat, noting that the probability of shared authorship was high. However, even together they could not solve the mystery of these lands. The riddle remained unsolved. If you take into account the body found in the forest, there are 3 of them. This added even more questions and intrigue. 3 unknown persons connected with the secret of the land. Having collected all the information, Healy concluded that there was once a kingdom called Yggdrasil here. She said that in the Elven lands, the deer is the messenger of the gods. These legends were part of their culture. In the lands of Till, that is, the land of demons, the deer is considered the messenger of the devil, so she said, without chewing her food. This contrasting perception of the symbol emphasized the discord of the worlds. This added to the complexity of understanding. The protagonist came to believe that Yggdrasil was at odds with the demon kingdom beyond the sea. This feud explained many of the mysteries and conflicts in history. He pondered this with seriousness. Healy now had 2 questions. Where was Midgard and why had Yggdrasil fallen? These mysteries troubled her greatly. She was determined to find the answers. Inspired by these questions, Healy told Makyou that she could not leave this place until she had uncovered the secret of the land. Her determination inspired the others. The team felt a new meaning in their journey. Jennifer and Sylvia also supported these goals. One of them said that the book had been passed down through generations. Perhaps it was their destiny to solve the mystery. This united their efforts. The protagonist was not prepared for such changes and warned that if ruins were found, they would be on his land. He would expel those who tried to appropriate the treasures. He stood firm in his position. After these words, the mystery of these lands remained unsolved, and life went on as usual. No one revealed the mysteries, but everyone understood that the time would come. Everyday life and mystery existed side by side. Healy and Till were assembling a stove from bricks of different colors and compositions, resembling a guard's helmet. The work was painstaking, and together they created a solid structure. It was a symbol of their work. Jennifer picked up a broom and cleaned, and also wove baskets. Such little things helped to keep the camp tidy and cozy. Every detail was important for everyday life. Sylvia thought, holding a large bone in her hands, thinking about new ideas and possibilities. Her thoughts were focused on the future. It was a moment of reflection and planning. Sylvia suggested Makyou try making armor and weapons from monster materials. It was a new and unknown direction for her. She expressed her desire to develop. It turned out she had never done this before, but she was determined to try. Her enthusiasm was inspiring. She was willing to learn and take risks. Makyou agreed, saying that there were plenty of materials and let her try. If she succeeded, she could pay for her apartment with it. It was their mutual agreement and support. After some time, Sylvia presented her work to everyone, a new armor with bracers and knee pads. She looked proud and confident. The protagonist praised her for her success. Since then, Sylvia had become the weaponsmith of the land, gaining experience and respect. This changed her role in the group. She was proud of her achievement. She asked the adventurer to teach her how to fight. It was her new ambition. She wanted to become stronger and more confident. He replied that he was not strong enough to teach anyone, but he could arrange training in wilderness survival skills. It was a reasonable and useful alternative. He offered support. The girl agreed and continued to ask him to teach her. They went into the forest, ready for new challenges. A new chapter of their journey began. In the forest, they encountered a large, angry bear ready to attack. It was a tense and dangerous encounter. They had to act quickly. Sylvia attacked and dodged, trying to find maneuvers for a decisive blow. All attempts with the hammer were unsuccessful. The bear did not even react. The fight was difficult. The protagonist watched from the sidelines, noticing potential in the girl. He advised her to look for weak spots in the enemy's defense. His experience could help her improve. The protagonist explained that if normal attacks are ineffective, it is necessary to change the battle tactics. According to his observations, Sylvia has not practiced such tactics yet. Despite this, she was able to win without revealing a weakness. Sylvia took the advice and asked where the hero learned to fight. She wanted to understand his path and approach to combat. This was important for her training. He said that, like any adventurer, he had undergone basic training in a guild. After that, he studied independently, improving his skills. His experience was multifaceted. For Sylvia, these words meant that the hero knew how to fight well. She was inspired by his confidence. Her desire to learn was strengthened. The hero noted that he was simply observing the enemy, and with experience, one could predict further actions. This was his strategy. It was based on attention and analysis. He used the example of bones, showing how you can get out of range if you understand which way the bones bend. Even when cutting up an opponent, you can learn a lot about them. It was concrete and practical advice. Leaving this place, the hero repeated the idea that one can find one's own way to fight by observing the opponent. He encouraged an individual approach. This was a lesson for Sylvia. The girl repeated this rule in her head, but she didn't fully understand it yet. Her training was just beginning. Time and practice would help her get the hang of it. The adventurer showed the following example. By placing an unknown fruit on your hand, you can find out if it is poisonous. This was a test for danger. Small details are important for survival. Jennifer ate the fruit and her mouth caught fire. It showed the consequences of thoughtless actions. She learned a lesson the hard way. The hero told her not to eat everything to avoid such situations. He guided and cared for the team. Their life required caution. Their life in the wilds was a routine, with trials and lessons. Every day brought new challenges. They grew stronger and learned together. One day, during lunch in the cave, an unexpected incident occurred that confused everyone. This brought tension into the atmosphere. Everyone became wary. They heard a cry from the western river, and Heli pinpointed its source. It was a disturbing warning. The team began to prepare. The protagonist took Till with him to check out the situation and told the other girls to stay in the cave. They shared the responsibilities. Time was valuable. They ran toward the river, ready for the unexpected. Their steps were quick and determined. Everything could change. By the river, they saw two people in black robes with their faces covered. On the hand of one of them was an incomprehensible sign, a symbol of mystery and danger. This was the beginning of a new story. Makyou looked at the area carefully, looking at every detail. Suddenly, he noticed motionless people in the distance and said so. Their poses alerted him with their strange immobility. Till squatted down to get a better look at the bodies. She checked their condition. There was no breathing. With a heavy voice, she reported that all these people were dead and showed no signs of life. She looked at one body for a long time, taking in the details. She reached out to it, as if trying to understand the cause of death. Questions about what could have happened to these people were spinning in her head. Till noticed a mark on one of the dead men that seemed strange to her. Makyou also looked closely and saw that they all had the same tattoo on their bodies. This united them and spoke of some common connection. The girl thoughtfully said that most likely the wildlands were the target of an attack. She stood and looked into the distance for a long time, trying to comprehend the scale of the disaster. The hero suggested that the reason for what happened could be an invasion of enemy forces. Till agreed and noted that now was the time to look for survivors. They understood that there was still hope, albeit small. Soon they found several more dead bodies, which upset them greatly. This did not add hope for salvation but only confirmed the seriousness of the tragedy. Makyou turned around sharply and warned that they couldn't leave the bodies lying around. Till suggested showing the bodies to the captain to get his support. They knew they couldn't handle what had happened alone. At first, they decided to ask Jennifer if anyone in the group had any information about what had happened. This could help them understand the situation and gather more information. They hoped for help from outside. The girls were shocked and could not recover from the horror they had seen. Meanwhile, Jennifer noticed a familiar tattoo on one of the dead men. This knowledge could shed light on the origin of the criminals. She put her hand to her chin and said that the mark belonged to the killers from the church organization. This revelation caused everyone to feel a mixture of fear and distrust. Now it was clear who was behind these actions. The characters asked with questioning looks what the expression 16 from Kasi's meant. They did not understand what was hidden behind this name. They tried to understand the meaning of this threat. While they were discussing who these mysterious people were, Makyou thought deeper. He wondered who exactly was behind the crimes. His mind was filled with guesses and assumptions, everything seemed confusing. The girl told Makyou the whole truth in detail, looking into his eyes. She tried to convey the seriousness of the situation and convince him of the importance of what was happening. Her words made him really think. Makyou felt that everything was too complicated for him and hard to understand. Many unanswered questions swarmed in his head. The character asked Makyou why the killers needed to come here and what their goal and motivation were. This question was the key to solving what was happening. Makyou turned to her, his eyes twitching with worry and shock. He knew the situation was much deeper than it seemed at first glance. His fear and anxiety grew. He looked at his companions and realized that there were too many suspicious people involved in this story. This made the task even more difficult and dangerous. There was a lot of unknown and threatening around. He then decided that they should leave the matter to the army. They could not cope with such a threat on their own. It was a deliberate and careful decision. The hero voiced his plan. He would go to the captain in the military camp. He suggested that the girls stay in the forest at a safe distance. That way, they would be able to get help and support. The captain, upon hearing this story, was astonished and shocked. He began to think out loud, trying to comprehend the information he had received. His reaction spoke of the seriousness of the situation. Makyou told him in detail about everything they had seen and learned. The conversation was tense and serious. They discussed possible solutions. The captain gave his opinion, but the young man did not agree and began to argue. He defended his point of view and offered alternative options. A lively discussion arose between them. They stared at each other, trying to convince each other of their rightness. The discussion concerned further actions and strategy. Much depended on their decisions. The man asked the soldier if he had more time before an important conversation. This question added tension to their dialogue. The time for making decisions was limited. Makyou was scared and looked at the commander, unblinking from tension. He felt pressure and anxiety. This moment was critical for him. The commander explained that the conversation would be about ownership of wild lands. This was a topic beyond the usual military issues. The question of ownership was important. The hero exclaimed in bewilderment and could not believe his ears. It seemed to him that this was a mistake or a misunderstanding. The news was so unexpected that it seemed fantastic. The character said that in 3 days they would have documents. These papers would officially secure the rights to the wildlands for the young man. Makyou was overjoyed and sincerely thanked the commander. For him, this was a great support and an important step forward. His joy was genuine. The man smiled and said that he would soon become a nobleman. This was important and significant news for the young man. His status would soon change. He looked at him with eyes full of disbelief and surprise. He couldn't believe such a change. Everything seemed too good to be true. The knight crossed his arms and gravely confirmed his agreement, but he added that for now the conversation must remain a secret. This required caution. Makyou continued to look at the commander with bewilderment. He tried to comprehend what he had heard and understand the consequences. Everything seemed too complicated and unexpected. The commander reported that within 3 days the noble's personal army would be able to return to the wildlands. This meant that large forces would soon intervene. The situation could change dramatically. The young man broke out in a cold sweat and asked why this was happening. It seemed incredible and frightening. The character explained seriously that the territory has not yet been officially registered. Because of this, the army cannot interfere, even during an invasion. Makyou realized that now was the perfect time to invade. This scared him even more. The danger was real and close. The commander was resolute in his plans of action. He was prepared for serious measures. Their task was to protect the lands at any cost. The young man was not thrilled by the sudden news. He said that such things should not be announced so abruptly. It required a more cautious approach. The hero waved his hand and noted that he was counting on the boy. His trust was firm and serious. Much was expected of the young man. Makyou continued to watch closely and asked how many people there would be in the army. This question was about resources and capabilities. The number was important. He thought for a moment and then said that there were about 2,000 people. The figure stunned the character with its scale. The captain explained that the forces were disproportionate because they only had 5. Their numbers were critically small compared to the army. This complicated the fight. He crossed his hands under his chin and added that without action a serious war would begin. The time demanded decisive measures. There was no retreat. Makyou's lips pressed together. He was deep in thought. Suddenly he realized that he didn't care whether he became a noble or not. the main thing for him was to preserve the wild lands. He thought of the vast expanses of the wild lands that he wanted to own and protect. That was his true desire and motivation. Everything else faded into the background. He shouted decisively, declaring that he understood everything. He promised to do everything to accomplish this task. His determination was unwavering and strong. Makyou calmly reported that the Eastern genius was going to attack them. He spoke with confidence, not showing fear, but making it clear that the threat was serious. The girls listened carefully to his words and quickly realized that the enemies would use traps in battle. They realized that due to the small number of opponents, the main tactics would be cunning and camouflage ambushes. One of the girls expressed that she understood the situation well and was internally uplifted. She perceived these challenges as an opportunity to prove herself and prepare for a serious battle. The girl breathed heavily and admitted that she saw this as a unique opportunity to take revenge on her enemies in battle. She felt that she would be able to show her strength and justice in the upcoming battle. The rest of the team looked puzzled and a little confused. They understood the gravity of the situation but were not quite sure how best to proceed. Together, they decided to immediately begin digging holes and setting traps to prepare a defense. Each of them took up the tool with full dedication, realizing that their safety depended on it. The shovels slammed into the hard earth, and the boys dug deep holes with great care. Their movements were coordinated and energetic, and they worked without rest, trying to dig enough traps. The elf thought about it, noting to herself that they seemed to be returning to primitive methods, digging holes, like in ancient times. Her thoughts were full of wonder at how ancient methods could be relevant today. Makyou, noticing her thoughtfulness, asked if she had any other ideas that could help in the defense. She hoped to hear something new and unconventional that could strengthen their position. The girl thought about the possible options for a while, trying to find something unusual. She concentrated, trying to come up with an original way of defense that could change the course of the battle. Her mind was working hard. Till suggested using original magic, speaking with high spirits and confidence. She believed that magic would be their secret weapon against the enemy. This suggestion inspired everyone and gave them strength. Everyone thought about it, realizing that they themselves could not wield such magic. This caused some disappointment, but did not break their spirit. They understood the need to seek help or support. Magic seemed to them something distant and difficult. Till raised her hands, asking Makyou to begin his spell. She hoped that he would be able to show his abilities and help in the defense. Her voice was full of hope and expectation. Makyou sighed heavily, concentrated, and tensed his arms, agreeing to show his magical skills. He understood the importance of the moment and was prepared to put in maximum effort. His gaze was determined. Suddenly, a huge boulder rose from the ground, stunning everyone with its size. The team stood in amazement, not believing what they were seeing. It was an impressive display of magic that lifted the defenders' spirits. One of the girls exclaimed in amazement that she had never seen anything like it before. Her words expressed shock and admiration at the same time. Such a display of power seemed incredible. The girls confirmed that they had not encountered anything like this before, assuming that it was earth magic. They confidently associated what was happening with natural forces, which added to their confidence in their own resources. Makyou explained that using such magic is not difficult at all and told about the principles of work. He tried to instill confidence in the team and dispel their fears. His words sounded calm and confident. However, one of the girls objected, saying that he was wrong and clearly knew less than she did. She was confident in her knowledge and wanted to convey this to the others. Her words caused a slight tension in the group. Everyone watched the magic display with attention, and Makyou began to worry, feeling the pressure and anticipation. It was hard for him to remain calm, but he knew he had to hold on. His palms began to sweat. The elf asked if he was creating the magic entirely on his own, admitting that she hadn't expected him to be so capable. Her surprise turned to admiration. This gave Makyou more confidence. Till began to explain that magic itself can check whether a particular spell can be used. She explained in detail how this process occurs, deepening everyone's understanding of magic. The magic seemed to express dissatisfaction and shock at her words, as if it did not agree with the explanations. It was a silent dialogue of powers and knowledge that showed the complexity of the magical world. The girl explained that she usually teaches magicians spells and formulas, and the young man only has to understand whether this knowledge can be applied. This was the traditional view of teaching magic. Magic responded that he couldn't do it and that he had been told that he had no talent. This confirmed the inner doubts and obstacles that Makyou faced. Till, however, stated that he was able to create magic from his imagination, looking at it with faith and admiration. In her opinion, this was a unique gift that went beyond the usual rules. The girls joked, pointing at him and calling him weird, but it was good-natured teasing. Makyou took it in stride, knowing that his weirdness was a strength. The elf agreed that he was indeed an oddball, but stressed that it didn't really matter to their cause. The main thing was his help and willingness to fight together. She asked if he could create a labyrinth, a complex magical structure that could confuse enemies. It was an idea that could greatly strengthen their defenses. The hero thought about this proposal, evaluating its labor intensity and effectiveness. He tried to imagine how he could bring the idea to life. The girl supported the idea and said that it was really good and could help them protect the cave. This gave the group optimism and confidence. They decided to make the path to the cave pass through many hills and obstacles. Such a landscape would greatly hinder the enemy's advance and give them a tactical advantage. She added that the high position would allow them to better control the battlefield and spot advancing enemies early. This was an important element of their strategy. Makyou was pleased with her answer and confirmed that it was indeed a good plan. His approval gave the others more determination. The team realized that it was better to avoid close combat in order to conserve energy and increase their chances of survival. This decision was pragmatic and well thought out. One of the girls asked if they could use monsters in battle to increase their strength. This question showed that the team was looking for all possible ways to protect themselves. Makyou pointed his finger and said that the use of monsters could be organized quickly and efficiently. His words gave hope that they would be able to strengthen the defense. Thiel added that magic circles could serve as additional reinforcement and protection, opening up new possibilities and strategies. She remembered that the book described several magic circles that they could try using. This sparked interest and excitement. Makyou thought about this idea and admitted that it was quite effective and could help them in battle. His support increased the team's belief in success. The ally noted that an important task would be to destroy the enemy's supply lines in order to weaken their forces. This is a strategic idea aimed at a long-term advantage. Makyou suggested poisoning the opponent's food, realizing that this could significantly weaken the enemy without direct confrontation. It was a clever solution. The elf thought about it and agreed that poisoning was indeed an effective and reasonable method. This added another element to the team's plan. She explained that palm sap could be made into pots that would melt easily in a fire, making them useful weapons. This added tactical flexibility. Makyou chuckled ominously, noting that they had plenty of ideas to prepare for now. His laughter was determined and a little bit of fun. He thought that they had a chance of success if they tried their best. This gave him confidence and hope. With a decisive cry, he called on everyone to begin preparing for battle, signaling the start of active operations. Everyone understood that much depended on them now. The hero looked mysteriously into the distance, his eyes wandering intently across the horizon, as if trying to look beyond the visible. His facial expression showed deep concentration. The girls standing nearby also peered into the distance, their gazes sharp and wary. They sensed that the largest operation in the wilds in many years was about to begin. The team methodically prepared to meet the enemy. They fortified positions, checked weapons, and assigned tasks. There was an atmosphere of intense concentration and joint effort. Makyou, noticing the general mood, smiled and said that now was the time to refresh themselves. They needed to eat to gain strength before the battle. His calm and friendliness eased the situation a little. Everyone sat around the fire, making a fire and preparing for the night. At that moment, the elf suddenly listened to the surrounding sounds. Her sharp ears caught something unusual, quiet but persistent rustling. From afar came the dull sounds of drums, rhythmic and growing. This howl resembled a battle signal that raised the morale of the advancing troops. The energy and determination of the enemy was heard in the air. The characters realized that the enemy was already close and were raising their morale before the battle. Their hearts began to beat faster, and their minds were filled with a sharp sense of impending danger. Jennifer expressed doubt, wondering if the enemy could really marshal a force of 2,000 on the narrow isthmus they were planning to cross. She doubted their organizational skills. Makyou replied that in such a situation, it was better to retreat to avoid unnecessary losses. He understood the strategic importance of preserving forces for a more opportune moment. The entire team sat on the hill, watching the enemy and analyzing the situation. Everyone's gaze was tense and attentive. Everyone was ready for any development of events. Time seemed to have stopped. An hour passed and they were still on the hill, tired but not weakened. Evening was approaching, the shadows were growing longer, and their bodies were demanding rest. Despite their fatigue, no one allowed themselves to relax. Makyou asked irritably if the enemy was going to attack at all, or if this was just a drawn-out wait. His voice betrayed impatience and inner tension, the desire to understand when the decisive battle would begin. The elf noticed quiet, barely audible screams and sounds of fighting coming from afar. She assumed that perhaps the battle had already begun, and the enemies were fighting without waiting for them to act. A lively conversation broke out between the characters about what they had heard and how it would affect their actions. They exchanged opinions. Makyou was deep in thought, absorbed in the current situation and its development. His face was serious and focused, internally analyzing the risks and possible strategies. The girls decided to bake bread. In the end, nothing serious happened that day, and the team returned to the cave to rest. Despite the lack of combat, the tension did not subside. Everyone understood that this was only a respite before the coming storm. Makyou, eating the bread, reflected on what had happened during the invasion of eastern Kenya. He tried to understand how it all came together and what lessons could be learned. His mind was immersed in analyzing the past. The girl replied that there were several traitors in the castle, which seriously complicated the defense and led to defeat. Her words brought darkness and mistrust into their plans, adding a sense of inner danger. The elf thought that perhaps there were traitors among them, and that this could harm the cause. Her suspicions caused alarm, and she voiced her concerns. Everyone turned to her, trying to understand how possible this was. She noted that it was unlikely that this would happen, trying to remain calm and not to spread panic. The team tried to maintain unity and trust so as not to let fears destroy their cohesion. Suddenly, Makyou declared that he would become a noble after this battle, greatly surprising everyone present. His confidence sounded unexpected and left many in thought. This became a new milestone in their common journey. The girls advised him not to rush to such conclusions and were cautious in such statements. They expressed concern for safety and understood that the battle was yet to come. Makyou thought about it and remembered that Healy was also a noblewoman, which gave him confidence and inspiration. This reinforced his intention to move forward and achieve his goals. A new fire ignited in his soul. He asked if there were any of them who were already nobles and could share their experience. Makyou wanted to rely on their knowledge and feel supported. This question helped to establish new connections in the team. Till, the elf, and the short-haired girl raised their hands to show their nobility, which came as a surprise. Their admission changed the team dynamic and added weight to their words. Makyou was surprised to note that he couldn't believe it. The three girls turned out to be noblewomen, which took their team to a new level. This opened up additional opportunities and prospects. Jennifer clutched the bread tightly in her hands, and a bead of sweat ran down her cheek. She was tense and excited. Despite her outward calm, inside she felt anxious and responsible. Makyou asked what the noblewomen did. The girl said that nobles ruled lands, raised children, and took part in battles, maintaining order and power. Their stories revealed new facets of the nobility. The young man closed his eyes and asked what they did in practice, trying to understand the real role of nobles. The girls explained in detail, revealing the essence of their duties and daily activities. He admitted that he would sort it out himself, because he was tired of long conversations and wanted to concentrate on business. He needed to rest and prepare for the upcoming trials. The team decided to take turns keeping watch at night so that they would always be on guard. This helped them stay alert and safe in the dark. The next morning arrived, and Makyou opened his eyes to see his colleague standing next to him, who had already noticed something alarming. She pushed him to act quickly, signaling a new danger. They hurried to the scene together. The characters found a dead boar there, trapped in a trap. This became an alarming sign that the enemies were already close and starting active actions. The young man explained that it was just a wild boar that had accidentally gotten caught in a tripwire, trying not to panic. He tried to calm the team down, although he himself felt the danger approaching. He looked to his right and saw a girl arrive, asking when she had managed to get to their camp. Her appearance increased his anxiety and added to his awareness. The girl, looking into the distance, reported that the enemies were already approaching and moving quickly towards them. This news alarmed everyone, and the team began to prepare for defense. Makyou tensed as she pointed her hand towards the stream where the large enemy army was hiding. His gaze became sharp and determined, knowing that time was short. There was indeed a large army of enemies moving through the trees, organized and ready for battle. Their numbers and coordination were alarming and forced them to act quickly. Among them stood a masked man, looking mysteriously into the distance. This was the leader of the enemies, a symbol of their strength and threat. His presence inspired fear and raised the significance of the attack. These men were chopping down trees with axes, hacking their way through the dense forest cover. Their movements were determined and purposeful, as if they were completely focused on the task at hand. Makyou noticed their activity and asked what exactly they were planning to do. He wanted to understand how big the threat was and what tactics the enemy was using. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of caution in it. The girl replied that the enemies intended to build a bridge to cross the obstacles and reach them directly. This explained the tree-cutting activity and was a worrying sign for the entire team. The girls reminded Makyou that it was difficult to fight on an empty stomach and that he needed to eat. They expressed concern and practical considerations, emphasizing the importance of preserving his strength. The girl said she brought smoked meat and nuts so that everyone could have something to eat and gain strength. It was a small but important sign of support and unity in a difficult moment. The team appreciated the gesture. Till, with her mouth full, asked Makyou what they were going to do next. Her eyes were shining with curiosity and determination. She wanted to know the plans and was ready to act. The character replied that they would wait. Makyou replied that they were going to use the monsters in battle, counting on their terrifying power and help in the fight. His gaze was firm, and he believed in the effectiveness of this unusual weapon. The girls turned to him and asked if they would really use monsters at such a crucial moment. Their doubts reflected fears of unpredictable consequences. The team decided to attract the monsters with scent, luring them to the right place to strengthen their position. Meanwhile, the enemy commander gave orders, and the troops went on the offensive. A fierce battle began. The army rushed forward rapidly. But they encountered an unexpected danger. Something sticky and salty began to engulf them, paralyzing their movement. Panic quickly overtook them. At that moment, wild animals noticed them. They rushed at them, unleashing a furious attack. The knights screamed in surprise and tried to fight back, but the hustle and bustle and chaos made the situation worse. Winged monsters also attacked from the sky, adding another layer of threat. Despite this, the knights were given strict orders not to retreat and to continue the fight until their last breath. The moment of the decisive battle had arrived. They fought desperately. Although attacks from beetles and living plants constantly hindered them, creating additional obstacles and threats, every minute was a test of endurance and courage. Their leader declared that he was going to burn them all with magic, threatening fire and destruction. His words instilled fear and pushed the defenders to find new ways to resist. The boys noticed that their commander was a real mage, which required them to reconsider their tactics and stick together. They understood that the forces of fire were strong, but there were ways to resist them. They decided to shoot the commander to interrupt his spell. The elf quickly readied her bow, focusing on her target. Each shot she fired could embody the hope of salvation. She took aim and released the arrow. It happened right at the moment the mage was immersed in the spell. It was risky, but necessary. The arrow struck the mage, interrupting his magical act and shocking his enemies. This moment became a turning point in the battle. His subordinates noticed the wound and began to show concern, seeing the danger to their leader. Confusion began to spread among the enemy. Makyou praised the elf, calling her a good girl, but she herself was dissatisfied with herself, believing that she should have killed the mage and not just wounded him. There was an internal conflict in her gaze. The knights began to search for the shooter's origin, trying to determine his location. This was an important tactical question. The magician ordered his subordinates to cover him with their bodies and continue the battle. The commander tries to retreat. It was a rescue maneuver. During the magician's escape, a hairy man appeared and condemned him for running away, pointing to internal discord. This complicated the enemy's structure. The knights stepped onto the ground and noticed a group of unknown people in a small gang. Their appearance added to the uncertainty of the battle. Makyou and his allies realized that they were adventurers, a disorganized force that could influence the course of events. Their intentions were unclear. Makyou asked Sylvia if she knew these people, trying to get information. His voice was tense, waiting for an answer. Sylvia admitted that they were her father's enemies and she was afraid, realizing the danger of their approach. Her words added seriousness to the situation. It turned out that this gang was the main force of the rebels, and they stood with grins, as if preparing for new intrigues and battles. This meant that there were still many trials and conflicts ahead. The rebels met the knights, who admitted that they did not know how to proceed further. Their faces expressed confusion and dismay because the road was blocked and they did not see a safe path. The rebel leader frowned at the knights, his gaze first landing on their shoes. There was steely determination and menace in that look, as if he was warning them of the consequences. Suddenly, blood began to pour out on the knights, spilling right in front of them. Everyone froze, stunned and not understanding how this had started. The atmosphere became heavy and uneasy, as if a curse had descended on the meeting place. Looking closer, they realized that this was not human blood, but the blood of monsters, whose smell and power filled the air with danger. It was an ominous sign that the enemy was using evil forces for his own purposes. A man with a cold, hard voice declared that anyone who tried to cross the bridge was doomed. His words sounded like a death sentence, making it clear that he was not joking and was prepared for a brutal confrontation. The knights stood in confusion and fear, watching the scene as they were threatened with weapons and magic. Their hands clenched into fists, but indecision paralyzed their actions. The man with the helmet and shield said seriously that the situation was no joke, and they should prepare for the toughest fight. His voice was firm and determined as he prepared to lead his warriors into battle. Meanwhile, Makyou, sitting on the hill, carefully watched what was happening below. He noted that the soldiers' behavior had changed notably. They had become more cautious and sometimes even panicky. Makyou also noted that the monsters and plants were killing soldiers with surprising ease, making the fight more dangerous for both sides. He understood that this tactic was changing the course of the conflict. The man stated that he would create a safe route for their troops to ensure a successful invasion. To do this, he needed brave and experienced soldiers who were ready to go ahead and pave the way. However, the soldiers admitted that they did not believe in success and did not see any chance of victory, after which many began to flee in panic. Their fear and doubts burst out, undermining morale. This created chaos and weakened the ranks. At this time, one of the soldiers stepped on a mine. The resulting explosion shook everyone around. The roar was deafening, and the consequences were terrible. This event further increased the panic among the troops. The long-haired man stood watching the explosion in disbelief when a bear suddenly appeared nearby and rushed after the fleeing soldiers. The beast added to the chaos and fear, further destabilizing the situation. The heroes watched as explosions rang out across the area, each sound increasing the anxiety and tension in their hearts. They knew the enemy was suffering serious losses, but the situation remained dangerous. Makyou admitted that everything that was happening was very unexpected and stunning for him. He did not expect such a tension of events and was shocked by the scale of what was happening. This revealed new challenges for him. The girls noted that using soldiers as pawns was cruel and ugly, expressing their condemnation of such tactics. Honor and justice were important to them, even in war. They were worried about lives. Makyou replied that sooner or later the enemies would still get here because their numbers were much greater. He was a realist and understood that there was no retreat. It was necessary to prepare for a decisive battle. The boys sat in a circle and decided to revise their plans to adapt to the new conditions of the battle. The joint discussion helped them to unite and find new solutions. They were full of determination and readiness. At that moment, Sylvia called out loudly to the boys, her voice trembling with fear. She was scared because she knew the situation was getting critical. Her words made everyone instantly focus. She reminded that these people were her father's killers, and that is why she wanted to destroy them. The hero understood her motivation, but he told her to abandon this idea. He also noted that the man with the skin on his shoulders was very strong and dangerous, which commanded respect and required special attention. His aura was unusual and inspiring fear. Makyou said that he had never seen such a powerful aura before, and it made him think seriously about the upcoming battle. They would be facing a strong opponent. Sylvia was very upset that she was not able to carry out her plan, and it weighed heavily on her heart. She was worried about the delays and uncertainty. Makyou insisted that they should follow the plan that had already been developed, without being distracted from the main goal. The girls supported him, expressing their agreement and readiness for action. He stood looking at the girls, and Sylvia stood quietly behind him, watching and supporting. The atmosphere was tense, but unifying. The hero noticed that if Sylvia was unhappy, it could lead to problems in their actions. It was important for him to maintain the unity of the team. She whispered his name thoughtfully, as if she was pondering something important. There was determination and hope in her voice. Suddenly, she said she had an idea, and she looked confident and inspired. That moment became a turning point in their plans. Till and Jennifer struggled to pull the cart loaded with heavy meat supplies faster. Although the cart itself was large, the amount of cargo exceeded its capacity several times. The meat was collected in one large pile. The tired girls brought all the meat supplies they could find and collect on a cart. They knew it was important to their plan and were prepared to use it with great care. They met the protagonist, who gave them clear instructions to move south, deep into the forest. This path promised to be difficult, but necessary to fulfill their mission. The girls placed their hands on the cart again, bracing themselves for the journey ahead. Despite their fatigue, their determination was strong. They knew they had to move forward. The cart slowly but surely rolled on. The plan was to first create a U-shaped passage on the south side to raise the terrain. This would lure the animals to the right place and control their movement. This was the key. The next step was to scatter meat around the dead-end area to attract animals. The smell of food would attract many animals, creating an effective trap. This step required precision and attention to detail. Many animals, primarily mammals, would have smelled the meat in the dead end. This was what was going to be used to gather a large group of animals. They began to watch closely. The animals were crowded together in a large heap. There were too many of them to count, and there were many species. Their diversity was astonishing, from small animals to large predators. They were tightly packed together, creating a living mass. The protagonist looked at the animals from the side, carefully assessing the situation. Among them, he could distinguish a green tiger, a dangerous lamia, a golden bat, and a mighty forest giant. The protagonist continued to watch, not missing a single movement so as not to miss the right moment. His eyes were focused and attentive, analyzing every signal of nature. He asked Heli, who remained on the mountain, how the enemy was doing. He hoped to get fresh information to adjust his actions correctly. Heli was visible against the sky where black smoke billowed, and described what was happening. She saw bloodied soldiers running through the forest, falling into pitfalls, explosions. Continuing to observe with her elven gaze, she understood that this situation would not last long. The traps had been set in advance and would soon exhaust their resource. A new phase of events would soon begin. Soon, as the elf predicted, the preset traps end. The pits were already filled with soldiers, and there were no more explosions on the hills, which meant that the enemy was no longer facing serious resistance. They could not observe any traces of sleep on the field, but they assumed that the soldiers walking on it were now asleep or in a stupor. This created an even greater danger for them. A quiet but ominous lull was falling. At that moment, a long-haired man, impressive and determined, approached them. He slung a huge sword over his shoulder and commanded the girl with the bow and the tall man in helmet and armor to go forward. Thanks to the efforts of the soldiers, the path was cleared and they were able to move further into the forest. This created the opportunity to continue the operation without unnecessary delays. Everyone was attentive to the surroundings. The man warned everyone to be careful and attentive to the local flora and fauna. The forest was full of dangers, and any careless actions could lead to disaster. They understood the need for vigilance. At this time, Till was accumulating magical energy within herself, preparing to use her power. She waited for the signal with great patience, concentrating on gathering magic. Her role was key to the plan. Jennifer was surprised that Till could accumulate such a powerful magical power. However, there was still no signal from Makyou, which made her worried. The protagonist hid in the greenery while the enemies passed by him, not noticing the cover. He remained invisible and patiently waited for the moment to act. His patience was about to be rewarded. The opponents moved far enough away, and then the protagonist came out of his hiding place. He set about his part of the plan, determined and focused. The time for decisive action had come. First, Makyou needed to use his magic to cut off the enemy's escape route. This was important to trap them and prevent them from escaping. His power would change the course of events. After this, a large pile of earth fell from above onto the dead end, blocking the way back. The enemy was trapped and unable to retreat. This move was a key element in the success of the operation. The hero had spent much more magic power than he had expected, which he himself noted. His energy was almost gone, but he had fulfilled his part of the plan. Fatigue was making itself felt, but the mission was accomplished. After all the noise of the explosions, the long-haired man became wary. Sensing something was wrong, he noticed that the situation had changed and became vigilant. His attention was at its limit. The protagonist's magic became a signal to the girls, which Jennifer quickly understood. She gave the command to Till to begin the action. The coordination worked flawlessly. Till heard the signal and without hesitation began to carry out her part of the plan. She released the accumulated magical power, directing it into the assembled group of animals. The magic was put into action. The animals sensed something was wrong at this point and the tension grew. They began to react to the magical waves trying to escape. Their panic increased. The plan began to work. The animals were driven into a corner, narrowing the space for their movement. It became cramped and difficult for them to escape. The animals gathered in a dense mass. The area became even smaller for them, and to save themselves from the fire, they gathered into an even smaller group. Some tried to climb on top of each other, as if escaping from imminent danger. Their fear was obvious. The protagonist ran towards this dead end, saying that they had a lot of work to do now. He realized that the fight was not over yet and that there was much to do. His voice was full of determination. He climbed to the top of the dead end to get a better view of what was happening around him. From his perch he watched the animals gathered and analyzed the situation. His gaze was sharp and attentive. He was spotted by Jennifer, who called out his name to get his attention. She understood how important his role was in this moment. Her voice was urgent and supportive. The protagonist, sweating from running and the previous spell, aimed his hand, preparing for the next stage of the plan. He gathered all his concentration to carry out his plan.